would like to thank Alex for being here to record our meeting tonight, and so we'll get going. Let's see. We do have an agenda, don't we?
Yep.
We do. Here, it's right here.
Oh, thanks. All right, so the minutes.
So Christine,
I don't have all this.
and I've spoken, the minutes for 127 were already approved.
They were approved on the February 10th meeting.
Okay.
So we can skip right ahead to February 10th.
With February 10th.
I did have some comments on February 10th's minutes, actually.
Go for it.
And one's just a typo on how we spelled tonight in the second paragraph. But the more substantive one is when we get to liaison update, it says Mr. Sorreo then began his update. Fiscal 16 sped budget was 5.8 million, and the first quarter costs were estimated at 5.8 million. The first quarter costs were not 5.8 million. So what I'd like to say is fiscal 16 sped budget was 5.8 million, and at the end of the first quarter, annual costs were estimated at 5.8 million.
So it's page 2, Christine, under liaison updates. That first sentence, after 5.8 million, then it says, and after the end of the first quarter, how did you say that? Fran?
Annual costs were estimated.
Annual costs were
Right, so
estimated.
after the first quarter of actual
Right.
experience, the estimate changed.
Annual cost, and what, is that number correct though, 5.814?
Yeah.
Yes,
Is estimated at the end of the first quarter
Yes.
of the year.
yes.
Okay. Is the rest right?
I have more comments. Right, and then we just carry that through, so to go into the page 3.
Well, how about just for that sentence, comma, but the estimate went down slightly in the second quarter. Do you want to add the estimate there?
Yeah.
You could. I
Yeah.
don't think it's, yeah.
Projected estimate, or projected?
Yeah, but the projected estimate. You getting that, Christine?
The sped budget was 5.8 million, and at the end of the first quarter, annual costs were estimated at 5.814 million.
Yeah.
Okay, but went down slightly in the second quarter to 5.5.
Right, so between but and when, we want to add the words, the projected estimate. So it would say, but the projected estimate went down slightly in the second quarter.
Okay.
Andrew.
Good evening, how are you?
And then
Manager?
I go to the third page. The second paragraph on the third page. It said, Mr. Sorreo continued, is how that starts.
Yes.
So what I would like to change, just for clarity, so this would say, Mr. Sorreo continued that, and then insert, based on results through the second quarter, the school's annual budget would have a deficit of $146,000. Do I sound like an echo?
Yeah, because it's out on the TV there. Yeah.
What's that?
It's on the TV.
It's on the TV in the
hallway. I
hall
can
for the
hear you.
overflow crowds that come to our meetings.
Oh. I was thinking I was losing it over here. I hear voices in my head often. It's usually not my own. This was weird.
Have you named them?
Is there a way to mute that out there?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That's all I have on
Now,
this.
if you hear voices in your head now, they should not be your own.
They're the ones I normally hear. Yeah.
All right, good.
So I have a couple comments. So if we go back to page 2, the liaison update paragraph that we had just worked on, I was thinking the second, let's see, how many sentences are we? 1, 2, 3, third sentence. Anyway, if you count down 1, 2, 3, 4 lines, pieces, so next year's budget is expected to see, next year's OOD budget
That's
is
true.
expected to see a dramatic increase of 900,000. So I think that's specifically out of district there.
It is.
Okay.
It is out of
Right.
So
district.
just add OOD, and do you see that? Okay. And then this paragraph at the bottom, the last paragraph on that page, count up 3 lines. If the student costs less than $38, there is no circuit breaker. So make that, add a K after the 38.
Yeah, and it's actually more than that now, right?
Yeah.
Is that the foundation?
The foundation's
42
something,
Yeah.
640 or something like
So
that
if,
now.
what, we could just say if the student costs less than the foundation. I have the amount somewhere.
Yeah, that's good, just
I have
the
it.
If the
foundation.
student costs less than the foundation.
Well, then back up a sentence. He also explained that the foundation level is 38,000. Is that what was said at that meeting?
That was what was at first said, but then Amy corrected the number, and it's actually, I know I have it.
I have it right here.
It's in the
Wait, but what did we say at
42,000
the
range.
meeting?
Yeah.
At our meeting?
What was said at the meeting?
What's in the minutes is reflective of what was said, yes.
Okay, then we have to
Okay,
leave.
then just,
So we shouldn't change
just
it.
add
So we
1,000
should
to
leave
it.
Okay.
So just so you know, it's 42,840 is the foundation level. But that's not what was said at the meeting. The
It
meeting
was
was said at 38.
38K, okay.
Bring that up, liaison update one.
So on the next page, page 3, the second paragraph, the last sentence, first quarter saw a rise in FTEs. I think instead of, it would be 2. So instead of seeing a rise in FTEs of 872, it would rise
Probably
2.
definitely.
It's a small difference.
What page are you on?
3. Page 3.
Second paragraph.
Second
last
paragraph,
sentence.
last sentence, first quarter
Oh.
saw a rise in FTEs of 872.
Thank you.
And make that 2. And then the other's just, I'll skip it. And I think that's it.
Mhm.
And I'm under, page 3, under my summary of the town manager's OPEB funding plan, did I not say 0.5% of general revenue? I think that came out somewhere, but it doesn't really matter. We get much more specific about that at later meetings if I didn't say it then.
Don't.
Yeah, so I move the finance committee approve the minutes from the February 10th, 2016 meeting. We have to say as amended, because we didn't do it as amended.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? 7-0?
Well, I wouldn't vote, I wasn't there.
Oh, okay,
6.
6-0-1 then, sorry about that. Okay. Do we have the 24th?
Yeah.
Yep.
I sent my changes in. This one was one that was not taped, it was recorded.
Oh, this was in the youth center.
Yeah. So Christine did the best she could with my notes and that tape recording, and so I already sent it, so.
Good.
Did a final draft go out?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
I move the finance committee accept the committee meeting minutes of February 24th, 2016.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I have to abstain, John, I wasn't there.
Anyone opposed? No? 6-0-1? Right? Okay, great. Have you been inside the new youth center, Greg?
Yeah.
It's pretty nice, isn't it?
Very nice, yeah.
Okay, I just put the joint meeting and the tri-board just so for tracking purposes. Do we have those?
No, we don't have
Okay.
it yet, John.
All right, good. Well then, I'll move on to the update on the chair's weekly meeting, and I'd like to welcome the town manager. Andrew, thanks for joining us. The road to a balanced budget is one of the items that we spent a fair amount of time working on, talking about it it was actually this morning. You know, I think I've shared with you in the past, but the difference between the town manager's recommendation and the school's request was about $1.8 million. And a couple of the items that we are simply discussing, there's, no one's been made any decision, but things that might help the path, the road to a balanced budget is health insurance savings, and Andrew hopefully will have that information firmed up a little bit more later. And the thing that would allow the town manager to do, if he would lower his health insurance appropriation in Article 4 and increase his recommendation for the school budget by about $500,000. Now, the reduction in the health insurance line would be more than $500,000, but the 500 would go to increase his appropriation to the schools, and then the other, we didn't talk about where that would go. It goes somewhere else. And that's one item that's being discussed. So that's $500,000. And then we talked about the circuit breaker, the special reserve that we have with his, which is inside of the actual circuit breaker account. And that one, we talked procedurally about how that would get accomplished. In essence, the school department would lower their request by $562,000 because their funding is not going to come from taxation for that, but the funding will come from the reserve. So the school department would lower their request by $562,000. And that would spend it down to zero. And Greg's nonverbal communication is one that I'm sure people will question. Why would we want to take a reserve that was there for those unexpected out-of-district students who move into the district and cost perhaps $400,000, and then we don't receive reimbursement for a year later from the circuit breaker? That was the whole purpose of building that reserve to begin with. So the school department would not necessarily get hit with those unexpected out-of-district large tuition students. That's the whole purpose of building that reserve. Well, the reserve has not been used for that purpose. An analysis of the out-of-district students that we currently have, we have one student with tuition greater than $200,000, one. The vast majority of our students who are moving out of district, their tuition is less than $60,000. And the purpose of that fund was not to help the schools with those lower income out-of-district representatives. So if we spend it down to zero, procedurally going forward in fiscal 18, let's say that there's another need for extra out-of-district dollars. Well, there'll be a separate warrant article for appropriation for that need. It's what's the article? The one supplemental appropriation. Yeah. So that would be in fiscal 18
If
the
there
need,
is a large tuition that comes in, then it
Well-
would be to reimburse the school for spending the tuition. Oh, okay.
well, in that
Not necessarily reimbursed.
first of all, the thought was it's going to be a lot cleaner, because we've been working for years to try to get a definition of why was that reserve set up. Was it set up for the purpose that I just explained, the one large student that moves in and then we don't receive reimbursement for a year later? That was the original intent of it, and that's still the intent I believe it is for. But, well, what if the school district has 10 new out-of-district students who average $75,000 apiece? Is that something that we would want a supplemental appropriation for? Or is that something that the schools have to factor into their budget?
Is there a way, one of my questions is, the huge increase in the need for special ed students seems to have taken the school department by complete surprise. And that startles me, because I'm just not sure that since the end of the school year and the beginning of the next, in 3 months, that there could be that big a change if they'd been doing outreach or in closer touch with some of the developments or sales data or any. I mean, I don't know how the estimates for enrollment are made every year for next year's enrollment, if it really was absolutely unanticipatable. Is that the word?
Yes, it is. I mean, we are in receipt of a lot of detailed information, more than more than we asked for. We asked for a bridge, a summary level bridge. We got more detail than even a summary level bridge. And from 16 to 17, there is 2 high-cost students that we didn't have before, one roughly 400, one a little over 100. So there's about $500,000. There are 5 kids, students, that are going to be placed.
Pending.
They're pending. They don't know where they're going to be placed, but they're going to be placed. And then there are 5 unilateral placements that the school's negotiating with right now. So if you add all that up, those 3 buckets add up to over $1 million.
And
So it is a very heavy year.
Right.
when did it first come to the attention of the school department that it was going to be a very heavy year? Could it, I guess is my,
Well, that's a great question, because the other thing is, the thing that happens in Article 4, the school department budget, there's a separate line item for out-of-district tuitions. That's just partial of the funding. The other funding is the circuit breaker reimbursement. So each year, for the last 3 years, the Finance Committee has questioned the amount that was in Article 4, the school department's line item. Was that enough money? Because if that line goes up, then other lines have to go down or go up at a lesser rate, right? And historically, the number of out-of-district students has been increasing. It was 78 in the first quarter of fiscal 15, and the fourth quarter of first quarter of 16, there's been 90. So the number of students has been increasing. So one could, a reasonable question is that line, because it was flat from the last couple of years, I think, right, Greg? The Article 4 line item in
Yes.
900 was flat.
Yeah,
And
it was,
with the increase,
Even though the enrollment, the
Was
number of
increasing.
students- Yes,
Yes.
was increasing.
So-
And I'm not, I shouldn't speak for him, I should ask this directly of Shelley, and I will, but I'm wondering if part of it is the new superintendent being surprised at the rise in this particular district. You know, that's occurred to me a little bit, I don't know what you think about that, Greg, but there is an element of surprise or unprepared thought about how expensive it is this year. I mean, that you're on,
Well,
that's true.
there's one other piece that occurred to me, and that is,
well, when you say surprise,
could it have been predicted?
no,
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
But that's why there's a reserve in place, right?
Yeah, technically, by law, we have to spend the
Right.
circuit breaker first. So, but I mean, those dollars that come in this year need to be spent within this year on the circuit breaker. But yeah.
But
I
that's
don't-
different
you
than
know,
the reserve fund.
It's yeah, it could
It's not
happen where you're caught.
Yeah, it is.
Just it happens. It just here it is. This
Wait,
kid's-
let's clear between
Wait,
circuit, because
you
Bonnie
said
had
the
the question
fund, the
about
reserve fund and the
versus
circuit breaker. So the circuit breaker funds come in and they have to be spent, but the reserve that's sitting there, that's something that we've set up.
correct.
It's the
It's,
same.
it's within the same account,
But it's
but
within-
it's a sub-account within that account.
Right, so, but what I'm confused by is we've talked about whether or not we spend it down or not, and you're saying we have to spend this money. So,
Don't get off on that tangent. It's funding that has to be spent, and there's regulations around it, but that's really a non-issue. The issue is, do we spend it down to zero or not?
Right.
I don't know all the regulations, but you can only have a carryover of the circuit breaker reserve of a year
1 year.
Okay.
of what you
Yeah.
previously were funding.
Okay.
So anyway, as far as compliance, it's a non-issue. We're
right,
fine
that's what I
from
wanted to
compliance.
understand, is what the difference there was. So we're holding this money, but it's being carried over kind of on this one-year basis.
We're fine from a compliance standpoint.
Yes.
I am not
Yes,
as
sir.
concerned with how we would handle future kind of extra large expenses that come into this, as I am that if we spend down this money this year, we're spending one-time money on continuing
Right.
operating costs. So we have to be very aware that going into next year's budget, there's a built-in increase there that will have to be covered. Because that's not a new student, that's
Yep.
just the.
That's gonna be the new
Yep.
It's gonna be the, you
It-
know, the
and that-
continuing of the current year.
And that's a great point, Joanne, and that number is about $800,000. And the.
After reimbursement?
The net increase that fiscal 18 will have over fiscal 17, without that reserve to tap into, because it's gone, will be about $800,000 more for the schools, assuming the out-of-district in
Stays the
fiscal
same.
18 remains consistent with 17.
However.
At that high 6.6
However,
million.
the circuit breaker money should go up
It-
in
it-
18.
It-
So assuming that there's no giant change in the way the state's handling that, we wouldn't have the full 800,000 to
Well, that's
have
my
to
point.
absorb.
When you say
But-
net, there's a
Yeah.
net cost because we get some reimbursement
Yeah.
from the state.
Yeah, yeah.
But
and-
I want to be careful about some of the things we're saying to make sure we're accurate. Like, the FY14 budget for out of district was $5.6 million. And they and they came in at 5.6 billion. So they came in right at, the budget for 15 was 5.6 million. And after the first quarter, they thought they might come in at 5.4. But after the second quarter, it went up to 5.9, almost 6 million. And so we're approaching a very critical time, and that's to call April 1st. Any kid that gets put in before April 1st, we own
It's in
that
our
kid.
budget.
If the kid comes in after April, the town that he
came
or
from.
she transferred from, that town carries it. So you
For
could
1
have
year.
a dramatic, you could have kids come in today, tomorrow, and we own them now. And that could be totally, we don't know. I mean, like my neighbor just sold her house. The people that bought it, they could come in with a kid that's special needs and put them in the school district. We'd pick that up. How would the school ever know and predict that? They can't. So last year, they actually budgeted 5.6 and came in at 5.9, almost 6 million. And then 16, they budgeted 5.8, and they're right now through the second quarter, we're looking at being at 5.8. So they're back on. But again, this is a critical window, the next 15 days. Any kid that comes in now, we own. And
I didn't know that. That's really helpful
For
information.
the first year,
see that?
you know, if it's
Well, there's-
after
yeah.
April, that first year the town they came from covers. It's the
Same for
same thing
us.
if one of our students moves to a different district, we still cover their tuition next year for 1 more year.
Okay, so,
And that was supposed to cushion the blow for a town with new move-ins after you've already budgeted, but that critical time.
So it's unpredictable, but Joanne, you made a point about whether this, you're actually using this reserve on a one-time basis, but then there's going to be an additional cost. It's not going to be that same level of cost because there's some reimbursement that's coming in from the state, but there is additional cost. So can we ask the schools what makes them think that they're going to be able to cover that additional cost going forward? There may be
Yeah,
some other
yeah,
one-time expenses.
They don't want to, well, I can't speak for the superintendent. They're nervous about spending it down to zero now for that exact reason.
For that reason, so
Yeah.
they're not comfortable with that recommendation. Okay.
Well, I don't say they're not comfortable with it. There's some hesitance.
Or that option, I should say.
Yeah, and the reason why I think it would be helpful to have that supplemental appropriation is another thing that we've been asking about for the last 3 to 5 years is the town of Andover's special education, the percent of our school budget spent on special education is significantly higher than the state average and has been consistently. And we don't have a lot of specific reasons for what is causing that. And the superintendent is not fully understanding what's causing that as well, and is something that he's looking into.
We saw a telling, I mean, I give the superintendent credit for the data that was presented to us, because there was a lot of data that's in their budget book that we hadn't seen. But there is an item in there that would make this even more perplexing, because for many years, the percentage of student population in SPED was lower in Andover than everywhere else. Not the last 3, but for many years. But we have always been spending a higher percentage of our school budget on sped than Massachusetts towns on average by a big margin. So if last year, it's 5%, 6% on a $70 million budget, that's like $4 million.
5% higher. The total percent's around 26%.
Right.
Yeah, and then the average, I think, is 20.
Right.
Right, so it's
Right.
6%. That's 6% on a $72 million budget is 4 point something million, right?
Yeah, so I think the scrutiny,
I
that
gotta
the
look up the
supplemental
count.
appropriation, if there is a need for the scrutiny at town meeting, would be healthy. That if there was a supplemental need for appropriation in fiscal
Because you'd be
18,
looking just at that number.
just at that number, and there would be a lot more information, I believe. I believe there would be a lot more information about the driving factors.
This is FY '18 that you're talking?
Yes.
Going forward, if we spend it down this year, a way to approach it for the following year.
Okay.
The other thing I want to say, I'm totally comfortable having spent the amount of time we're spending on this to say there's 78 kids and then there's 80 or 82, that could be really deceiving, because that one child now that's 400,000, that's roughly 8 to 9 kids, because the average cost is nowhere near
About
that.
50.
The average is more like 48. So that's about 8. So you get one kid in, that's like having put 9 kids in if you.
I got you, Greg, but by looking at the numbers, that the number of children that we have today with tuition greater than $200,000, one. So it's not those high-cost tuitions that are driving the increase. In fiscal 17 it is, right? Because there's one student who's going to cost $400,000 and another that's going to cost $100,000. So those are the two projections for 17 that take up a significant increase.
But the bigger driver is the higher enrollment. We're up to 91 students for out of district.
Yeah.
I
And
think the estimate's 94 actually.
Okay.
What
well,
they use for 17.
but what if you've got the 5 that are pending,
Mhm.
Yeah,
right?
they're not in that number.
They're not, and you've got the 5 that are
Unilateral.
unilateral placement, so that's 10
10.
extra.
So we go to 104.
Why were we at 78 in the first quarter of 15, and now we're gonna go up to 104? Is our special education system working effectively?
So I have 2 questions. If these same students lived in a different town, would that town be paying the same amount of money? Would they have the same placement, and would it cost the same amount of money in a different town?
If they have the same placement, the tuition would be the same.
So in other words, yes.
Yeah,
In
of
other
course.
words, it's not that, why are we paying more money? How about
tuition's
location?
regu-
But when we
tuition's
say
regular.
we're spending more on special education as a percent of budget than other towns, that includes in district
Right.
and out of district. I don't know if our out of district costs are higher or lower than, that's a combined thing.
Right.
Because to your point, if we're paying 400,000 for this kid, if he or she were in Reading or North Reading, they'd still
They'd
have
be
to
paying
spend
same.
400.
Right,
It's the same dollar amount.
Because it's the residential, right.
Yeah, I would
Cost.
think the out of district costs probably, if they had the same students, they'd have the same exact cost.
Right.
So
It's
it's
in
in
district.
Okay.
In the
Yeah.
interest of
Yeah, yeah.
time, we might want to continue
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
after the
Yeah,
7:30.
that was just, I wanted to have it, that, because if you get people that spending down to 0, it might be something that will be debated.
Okay.
Okay.
So we are going to come back to that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
the health insurance money we wanted to talk about again.
Mhm.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Let's see, what else came up with this?
I think we should move to the 7:30
All right, yeah,
speaking
there's,
portion of the agenda and carry on after we're through that, so that we don't
okay.
keep.
We have the pleasure of having Bob Landry and Tom Hartwell here this evening to present information on other post-employment benefits. So, Mr. Landry, you are first up. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Happy to talk about this. I want to make good use of your time. I think I have 10 minutes to go to start it off here. As you you want to get into questions? I mean, you all have a copy of my report by now, I assume, right? So I can kind of give you a high-level overview of the report, and then you can ask questions. Would you like to do that?
That would be good.
That sounds good.
Okay, so in the report I prepared, I broke down the OPEB issue into 3 categories. I used the metaphor or adage of digging a hole. Size of the hole, stop the digging, and filling the hole. So the size of the hole category really just talks about what is the real size of our OPEB liability, and I think you saw in my report, I tried to go into great depth about how we've measured that in the past and maybe some changes that we can do going forward. And I'm happy to say the OPEB report that came out yesterday by Siegel actually incorporated a lot of the things that we've been trying to do, which is changing discount rates to something more reasonable. Tom Hartwell had a lot to do with that. He's done a lot of great work on doing that, and Andrew and his staff, to their credit, really worked to get that right. So I think we're seeing a much more kind of honest assessment in the new OPEB valuation, so on the size of the hole. Stop the digging, where I think the heart of my report is, really comes to how do we slow down the growth of this liability? We've got a massive liability. It's costing us a lot of money. So what are some of the OPEB reforms? And those fall into 3 categories: premium contributions, plan design, and eligibility. On those 3 categories, plan design, we've really kind of checked that box this year. The Board of Selectmen, with the leadership of our new town manager, we've adopted the ability under Section 22, under municipal health reform, to be able to unilaterally, outside of collective bargaining, to change the plan design. And you can see the kind of high-level impact of that on page 27 of my report, where it shows kind of how copays are increasing. And that drives higher copays, higher cost sharing, leads to lower claims and lower premiums. So we're really going to, just that change alone is going to change the trajectory of what our costs are going to be.
So that we can change the plan design without anybody's permission, or just, sorry.
That's right. Municipal health reform passed in 2011, which we invoked already once. That was in place from 2012 to 2015. It creates the creation of a PEC. The PEC is the combination of all the town's unions that we negotiate with. But when you invoke this particular section, 22, the right it gives us as a municipality is to unilaterally change the plan design, which are basically the copays and deductibles, to do it unilaterally without negotiating. We can do it as long as basically what we're doing this year, like we did last time, is we're changing our copays and deductibles to match the most popular plan at the GIC, which is called the Tufts Navigator Plan. A lot of state employees are in it, other municipal employees. So basically that's our target. So as long as we match our plan design to that plan design, we're within the bounds of our right to do it unilaterally. And the only thing we have to negotiate with the PEC, the union group, is really how they want to use. We have to give them 25% of the first year savings. So if the first year savings is $1 million, we have to give them 25% of that. It's a little more actually than that.
It's one time, right?
But that's one-time money. It's first year savings. So Andrew is negotiating with the PEC now as to how they're going to get that 25%. But that is the only thing they can negotiate on, is that 25% of first year savings. The town now has a new baseline for the health plan we offer, and that becomes the new default. So going into next year, even if we collectively bargain, it has to be done off of that baseline. And we never give up our right to invoke Section 22 again if we need to. So plan design.
And the boundary on that is always going to be whatever the
GIC.
The GIC plan.
Right now.
That's the structure. That's the thing that holds you in, is wherever they're at.
That's what the statute calls for. So unless that changes, that is what we do. And the Tufts Navigator plan just happens to be the plan by statute that's the most popular plan, the most heavily enrolled plan. And so that becomes the benchmark. Now, I think what's happened at the GIC is they've had their own financial troubles. So they've had to make changes to that Navigator plan, meaning increase copays and deductibles. And that's what's created the space for us to take our plan and now raise some copays and deductibles to match it. And that's what's creating the $1 million plus of savings over, versus what we budgeted last year versus what we budgeted this year. We'll get into that in more detail. But so
what percentage of retirees are covered by that? Because it's non-Medicare.
Well, what we're talking about are the non-Medicare plans, because you have retirees that are non-Medicare, which Andrew calls the gappers, right? They're in that gap before they become Medicare eligible. So you have non-Medicare eligibles, which basically get every plan, the same plans that are offered to full-time employees. They get on the same terms and conditions, the same payroll deduction, the same benefits, if they're under 65. Once they become Medicare eligible, they get one of two Medicare supplemental plans, MedX or Managed Blue for seniors.
And do
Okay.
the plan design changes that you were talking about affect?
Plan design changes don't affect the Medicare plans. They
Right, so what
affect-
percentage of employees are affected by that?
I don't know. I know for OPEB, you have about $4 million, about 950 that are enrolled, and it's about half and half from a
Right.
cost point of view in terms of enrollment. I'm sure it's in the report somewhere, I just don't know off the top of my head. Okay? So we talked about the size of the hole, which we've kind of addressed. We have a new Siegel valuation that just came out yesterday. I'm sure that's going to be posted or shared very soon. We talked about the stopping the digging, which is premium contributions, which we haven't talked about yet, plan design, which I just spoke to about, and eligibility, which is controlled basically by the retirement boards. It's kind of, and by state legislation. We can talk about that. And then finally, there's filling the hole. So filling the hole is what we've always talked about here in terms of how much do we put into the OPEB trust fund to go against the liability. So the liability at last count was, well, the last valuation was $145 million. This valuation just came out, pegs it at $184 million. I haven't gone through the Siegel report yet, but it clearly has gone up because some of the assumptions, particularly the discount rate, has been adjusted to a more appropriate level. So we're looking at a
What
hole
is that
that's...
change, as long as you scanned it?
Six
That's the other
something,
key
wasn't it?
number
Six-
that you would have.
I'm
picked out.
sorry?
What was the change in the discount rate with yesterday's evaluation? Do you remember? Bob?
Yeah, the discount rate was dropped, the blended discount rate was dropped to, I think, 4.25.
Correct. Yes.
4.25. And that's a change because they took it's a blend of a funded rate and an unfunded rate. And when you lower the funded rate, and part of this is just, good practice, it brought it down from 5.75% in the last valuation to 4.25% in this valuation. So that alone, and that's a very good step moving to what I believe is a much more honest discount rate for valuing these liabilities.
So that's going
When
to
can
cause
we
our,
get copies of that?
Yes, that's what
It just got it distributed yesterday.
I sent it to, I think, John and Lynn for distribution to the whole committee, so I don't know
okay.
if it's
you
in.
did.
I didn't.
Yeah, no, I,
I'll look,
Yeah,
the
I
town
probably done.
email?
Oh,
Town
town
email.
email.
yeah, I sent it to your town
So-
email.
Okay.
Donna,
that-
can you take up distributing these to the finance committee? I mean, and I assume you're copied on them.
I don't
You just
look at my
blank-
town emails very
I
Yeah.
often.
try to look at my
Yeah.
town email.
Yeah, Donna, if we could make
I will
you the
forward it to your
distributor,
non-town
just
email.
No,
blanketly distribute anything you get. Just, yeah, it's,
So
and
Bob,
make sure you get it to the non-town
She's
email.
Both.
likes to
It has to go to both.
call me out on that.
Not you, no, but we don't get things on the, you have to do both, and that's what Lynn's done, you have to do both.
I just,
Real quickly about one of the things that we've talked about this previously, but the change in this discount rate obviously is going to change the unfunded obligation, right?
It's made it go up to 184 million.
And so the one of the things that was one of our questions was if we change how we're funding it, like this year in our town meeting, we're going to have articles relating to funding
Yep.
OPEB. Have we gotten feedback from our rating agencies about the impact of the change in the increase in our unfunded obligation and then the change in lowering, in essence, the funding that we're going to do for this current fiscal year and the impact that may or may not have on our rate, our bond rating?
That's in the budget book, but I'm going to let the town manager
Sure, so
handle that one.
does-
He's spoken with.
Thank you, and thank you, John, for the question. So Dawn and I had a conversation with our financial advisor who deals on a regular basis for a number of municipalities with regard to OPEB unfunded liability and its impact on our rating. So to answer your question, the plan as put forth in the budget book that was released on the 5th, we are actually of the opinion that it's going to have a favorable response from the rating agencies in that it's consistent and it's not subject to volatility. And I think we're comfortable in the fact that putting $1 million towards the liability is far greater than what most communities are doing, even fellow AAA communities. So I'm comfortable with that in that respect. What we haven't discussed with them, based on the report just coming out yesterday, was how the increased liability factors into their equation. I don't expect it to be a big issue in terms of the impact on the rating.
But that would have happened one way or the other.
Right.
The increase in the rate,
Yep.
that was an actuarial, somebody made that call, but that's separate from the funding that we're gonna propose to town meeting this year, which is in essence changing a policy. Well, it was a change in a practice.
Change in practice.
Change in practice.
A 2-year-old.
Well,
But
for now.
yeah, and so I just wanted to make sure that
Strategy.
that was something that would not negatively impact our rating.
I do not believe it.
Because that was one of the things that we had discussed, right?
Well, that, and it's still gonna, I mean, if we change the funding, I mean, you just draw
The line changes.
We're still gonna have this big pile of money that's gonna be unfunded. I don't get that.
We are, but what I don't get is, the lines are not the same. When you fund more, the line doesn't go up as sharply. So with a higher discount rate, I would think you'd have more of an issue. Like the line is gonna move further apart.
Well, it's kicking it down the road. It means for at least this year, if we fund less.
Well, we have a lower discount rate, first of all, not a higher.
Yeah, it's lower.
Oh, I'm sorry, lower but higher implications.
A lower,
Lower-
quite frankly, a lower, more accurate discount rate.
Right, but
That's
the
fine.
lower discount rate, thank you for correcting me, because that's important. The lower discount rate results in a higher liability.
Higher liability, that's right.
And so what I wanted to
Yes.
say is the line is going to go up more sharply, and the difference, if you fund more, is going to have more of an impact. If you
Yeah.
fund less or more, that the second line, the lower line, because, you drew a great chart in here, and you make the point that you're still gonna have a big liability, but that lower line, under the old discount rate, was still, 200 million is a huge difference here.
So if I may just jump in real quickly, the report that came out yesterday, the increase to the 184 unfunded liability assumes proceeding over time with the funding strategy as set forth in the budget. So that 184.
Baked in.
It assumes.
It has the new funding strategy.
The new
built
funding
in.
strategy.
So,
Okay.
but the new funding strategy comes up with a greater liability, although.
Well, what would it have been under the old funding
Yes.
strategy is the question.
Yes.
Well, it would have been, let's not confuse this. The lower discount rate is raising the unfunded liability compared to what it would have been,
Yes,
but that's
yes.
using an accurate discount rate, thanks to all the work that Tom Hartwell's done, okay? The funding, we are clearly, compared to what we were before, we're going to be putting less money towards the unfunded liability. With the prior plan that was in place, we were putting almost $2 million. We're now going to be putting in a little less than $1 million. The methodology has changed, which I happen to agree with, doing as a percent of the budget revenues, and in combined with the enterprise fund, funding the full arc in water and sewer. So it is less money, but it's on a better formula. Now, one thing to add to the rating agency, and I've shared this with one or two, at least some of you, S&P has a report they've issued, a white paper, on how they look at OPEB funding. They have said in the white paper that they're going to be looking at municipalities by putting it in the context of long-term obligations. So they're going to look at your debt service, pension, and OPEB funding, and look at how you manage those going out. So I think they have the right approach, which I think is kind of how I put forward in the report. I believe it's similar to how Andrew's proposed it, which is to have this be based on a predictable model that can go out. Now, the natural question is to say, well, that's fine with the methodology, which Andrew puts at 0.5 of the general fund budget, but that only amounts to half what we were putting in. So why not make it double that? Use the same methodology, make it double. That would be the natural question. And for a lot of reasons, I don't think that's a good idea, and this is where me and my friend Mr. Hartwell differ in terms of the amounts.
Speaking of Mr. Hartwell,
Yep.
it's 7:45.
Okay.
But that is the question.
Yeah. Can I ask, I don't want to get into the debating, should we use this rate or that rate, because that's not my expertise.
Yep.
No, I think the rate is the rate.
Yeah, but let me ask you, how is the rate determined? Like, we went from 5.75 to 4.25?
Yep,
And we had the same company do the report?
yep.
So who makes that decision? Do we have an impact on that? Like, Andrew, do you call them up and say lower the rate? Or is the actuary independent, or who makes that decision?
So it's a great question. Ultimately, with regard to the OPEB valuation, the decision is made by the town of what to actually proceed with. That said, I don't pick up and say use this number, but we have a significant conversation with the actuary. We play off a lot of assumptions on what are the actual have been returns on some of our investments and what we assume them to be, and basically come up with a reasonable compromise. But the key to that is the actuary signs off on this, so it's not as if we're using an irresponsible rate, but something that I will say is much more conservative in our approach than potentially what we've done in the past. But it's certainly within a range of what's being used in the industry and in other municipalities.
So if you would have called them and said put it to 1%.
She wouldn't have signed it.
She wouldn't have signed off, yeah. I mean, they brought.
So there's limited parameters as far as the fluctuation could go.
Yeah, and the big driver was the funded rate. We were using 7.75 before as an assumed rate of return, long-term rate of return, and most are coming off that. Even some of the state pensions are coming off there. They're getting it, recognizing not as quickly as they should.
This is a trend
Huh?
nationwide to reduce those rates.
I'm sorry?
This is a trend nationwide to reduce those.
Well, because the rates were unrealistic. I mean,
unrealistic.
Tom's probably got a lot of stats to show you that we've not even come close to hitting the historical returns on the pension side, at least.
This wasn't meant to be a tag team approach, but do you mind tagging Tom? and
Not at all.
having him join in
Tom,
on
you're
that?
in.
You want me to
Since
sit up front here? so you
Yeah,
can-
since it's almost 10 minutes to,
Sure.
10 minutes to 8.
I've actually only prepared a couple of slides, so this won't take too long. But I first want to say thank you for having me here, giving me this opportunity to speak. I'm here, as I think most of you know, I'm on the OPEB Advisory Committee. I'm not here representing the committee. I'm here as a taxpayer because I am concerned about the amount of money that the town is going to be putting into the OPEB fund for fiscal year 2017. And Christine, if you turn to the next slide. I don't disagree that we need to change the methodology. I applaud the town manager in coming up with this new approach. My disagreement is that instead of the 0.5%, if we used 1%, we would have been close to what we put into the fund last year. You put in approximately $2 million last year, I think 1.7 million the year before. And I know it's somewhat arbitrary and it could have been zero or not zero, but significantly less than that because you're using a percentage of free cash and that fluctuates. But the fact remains is that in the last couple of years, you've certainly demonstrated good faith in putting a large chunk of money into this trust fund. And now, with all this noise and all this work that's being done on OPEB, the good work that Bob did with his report and the work that we're doing with the OPEB Advisory Committee, the town is going to be asking for reform, and a lot of the reform is going to be asked from the employees and retirees. And in the same breath, you're saying, but at the same time, we're cutting the contributions by half. And I think that's going to be a hard sell, convincing people that we need to convince that the town is serious about funding this obligation. Because what you're going to find out in a minute is that the monies that we're putting in 2017, it's just not the difference between 2 million and 1 million. It has some further effect because of the way the actuarial calculations are done. You can turn to the next slide. You asked earlier, where did these rates come from? And what I thought I'd do is just explain for 2015 the blended rate. What has to happen is the actuary looks at, because you're not fully funding, you don't have a plan to fully fund this over a period of 30 years, you have to use this so-called blended rate. You take the rate that the town will be paying towards OPEB benefits with their own cash. And in this case here, we used 3.75%, or the town did, because if you look at the long-term effect for core funds, that's the average of 3.75%. Fortunately, it's also the same rate that you're going to have to be using under the new GASB 75 which is the 20-year tax exempt muni rate as of 6/30/15. So they're very similar, and so we're not, when we do adopt GASB 75, the impact won't be as great because we're using it as 3.75. And I think we hope to have the number for GAS 75, even though we're not adopting it, we will have that number. The second rate is the rate that you're earning on your trust assets. We are not investing like we're investing for real retirement. We don't have our money in prim. We have it in a mutual fund that's primarily equities and fixed income. So our asset allocation is different and our yields are different. What the town did was look at not only what the actuary provided, what her rate was, which was 6.60, but also looked at other investment firms' long-term projections and average and came out with a 6% rate. So by funding less this year as compared to 2 years ago, you're going to have to take more of the town's assets to fund it. So you're going to be closer to the 3.75% rate than you would be to the 6% rate. If you look at the 2013, the 4.5% is the same as the 3.75. You can see there was a 125 basis point difference. Now you only have a 50 basis point difference. And a good part of that has to do with more money has to come from the town and not you won't have available in the trust fund to fund this obligation. So this has, just by underfunding it, it lowers the discount rate and increases the liability. You can turn to the next slide.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
Please, just to make sure I understand it. So if we're putting less in the trust, I think that if I'm understanding this, money in the trust fund is getting a rate of return of 6%. Money not in it's getting 3.75.
Yeah, that's what the town could earn if they invested the cash that they have on the books long term. That's what they would earn, 3.75.
Okay, so by putting less in the trust fund, that would be earning at 6%. I see where we're hurting ourselves because we're getting less of a contribution coming to us from the trust fund, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Next. This is the final slide. And this is just, and I know what's, in 2013, if you look at the actuary schedule, she was scheduling out that there was going to be payments of $78 million made over 30 years. And earning the discount rate of 5.75%. She was projecting in 30 years that we'd have $231 million. And we'd have a net obligation after 30 years of $357 million. Now, the $78 million is somewhat suspect because it's based on that 25% cash. However, let's assume for a moment that $78 million is right. Using the new schedule, we're only going to be putting in $37 million over 30 years at a 4.25% discount rate. We're only going to have $122 million, and because of other changes, lowering the overall discount rate, changing the mortality tables, and other rates and assumptions that got changed, we're now going to have, the actuary's report yesterday is projecting we're going to have a $652 million obligation for OPEB in 30 years.
Absent some enormous legislative or federal
all the reforms, I'm going to make a statement here, and I don't know if Bob will agree. All the reforms that Bob has recommended in his report, and all the reforms that we're recommending in our report, my personal opinion, will not materially reduce that 652. It will slow down the growth of that because a lot of it is, for new employees and things of that nature, and it will have some effect on it, but it's not going to materially reduce that to a manageable number. And the only way you're going to start doing this correctly is to start paying and funding this thing more aggressively. There's a closed-in schedule in your report, the actuary's report, that says that if you put in $6.3 million this year and it goes up by 3.75% each year, you will have this thing paid off zero in 30 years. You're putting $920,000 in.
The problem is you have this tremendous tension between the fact that there already is so much pressure on the operating budgets in town.
Other towns have gotten serious and have, look at Wellesley. They're the poster child for good OPEB behavior. They're going to have their OPEB paid off by 2037. They're going to have their pension paid off by 2030 because they started recognizing their obligation years ago by setting aside money. This obligation just didn't come out overnight. We've always had this, but the town didn't do anything about it.
And Jane, the tension's only gonna get worse.
I know.
So think about the box that we have in terms of we're talking about that fixed cost.
When does the box trash us permanently?
The
How many
box
years?
is gonna
will it-
overwhelm the one
When?
big.
Well, I've had that question asked.
What specific
When
when?
does it happen?
When does
How
the
long
fixed-
can we continue as a pay-as-you-go?
Yes.
If I could, Lynn, I'm sorry, Tom, I don't want to interrupt what you're saying, but on that issue, I mean, this is kind of like the frog that you throw in hot water and it jumps out because it knows, but a frog that starts in cool water and you heat it up just stays in there and boils. This is kind of like the frog that's in the water and we're boiling slowly. It's not going to be, I think, some catastrophic event. It is going to be what we're seeing already. We're seeing the operating budgets being crowded out. This is part of the fixed cost box, expanding and expanding and expanding, and it will expand even more with the more money you put in. And it's going to crowd out and continue to put pressure on the operating budgets to the point that not all at once, but you will have to start cutting staff or making other sacrifices.
So Bob, are you arguing for or against?
Well,
that suddenly sounded like an argument.
No.
Funny more.
I don't think, this is where Tom and I disagree. I disagree on the funding strategy for a couple of reasons. I think, one, we can't afford to do any more than we're doing. I mean, Andrew inherited an unfunded pension liability, unfunded OPEB liability, unfunded municipal buildings and facilities that we need to spend. We've got water and sewer infrastructure we need to fund. We've got a lot of priorities in this town. And OPEB is only one of those, and we can't overly commit to that. I also make a point, I think it's in my report, that legislative change, state legislative change, the kind of House Bill 59 was one of the best options for reform, and it failed, went right down the tank. Nobody on Beacon Hill's talking about it. Everybody we all talk to, nobody's talking about it. And the word I get from people that lobby on Beacon Hill on this say that they view it as not a problem. Hey, look at Andover. They're doing okay. They're throwing $2 million a year. No need to reform. We're okay. Nothing to see here. And I think that there's a risk that if municipalities continue to, basically compromise everything else in order to fund this liability, the incentive for reform is going to be kept at bay and diminished, as opposed to doing whatever it takes to keep the rating agencies happy, putting forward a reasonable amount towards liability. The facts are, this is filling the Grand Canyon with a teaspoon. We're no matter what amount, even if you do the amount that Tom's recommending, you could add $2 million to that, and you're still going to have several $100 million owed. This hole is never going away. And I think the one thing back to Beacon Hill for a second, the impetus for municipal health reform that I talked about, that we are executing this year, that's becoming a very effective tool. The impetus for that legislation was when the Boston Foundation, it was, I forget the organization, they did a study and realized that all new Chapter 70 money for the schools was going to health insurance. That was the motivation for the state legislature to say, we can't do this anymore. We have to give the municipalities some power to reform. And I think the same is going to happen on OPEB. When you realize that all these other towns, I mean, Andover I think should lead, but we should be leading on stopping the digging, not on filling the hole.
Yeah, but Bob, we have two issues though. It's the stopping the digging and filling the hole, right? And those are two very big issues that the legislature is not going to come in and all of a sudden just solve for us.
No, and my report I think makes it pretty clear that I think too much of the emphasis has been on filling the hole, which I think is a futile effort. Trying to fill this hole, I think it's futile, even at the levels that Tom's suggesting. I think it's a futile effort, and it comes at great sacrifice. At great sacrifice. I don't even know how you'd afford it. I mean, tell me where you're going to find the money, even in this year's budget, to do anything to double the amount. Where's it coming from? Are we going to not do town yard? Where is the cut going to come?
Can I ask a question to Mr. Hartwell just to finish up his presentation? So I was taking notes. Could you repeat what you said? What is it that you said would need to be put in this year?
For fiscal 2017, we would have to put in $6.3 million.
Yes.
And then each year it would go up by 3.75%.
To get to zero in
to get to zero
in
30 years.
Yes.
Otherwise, at the pace that we're on today, you're going to have almost a $652 million debt. And then, let's not kid ourselves. Everybody's feeling comfortable and warm and fuzzy that pension's going to be paid off in 2032. I'm on the pension board. As you know, I've disagreed with a lot of things with the other members. That thing is not going to be paid off in 2032. You're not going to have $25 million to write a check for pensions in 15 years, which is what our schedule calls for. Today, you're putting in $8 million. It's just not going to happen.
But the pension is if I could, the pension is a good example of this, though, which is last year, we raised the pension funding by $1 million a year, right, with the hopes that we could amortize this by 2032. It was rationalized on the basis we had a 7 3/4 investment rate, discount rate. You know what we earned last year? Less than 1%.
70 basis points.
70 basis points. So, you know, that $1 million that came right out of the operating budget this year to go to pensions, you see the schedule, it's in the back of my report, had a real opportunity cost. And like Tom says, the 2032 schedule is a myth. We'll be lucky to make 2040, which is required by the state, I think. And I don't see that happening.
And the pension board, you know, I asked them last month, they said, let's stop using the actuaries' return on assets. And the last time they used 7 3/4. And they told me, no, she's the expert, you're not, and they're going to continue to use whatever she suggested. In the last 15 years, we earned 4%. We used 8% from the actuary. Our unfunded liabilities for pensions went up from 17 million in the year 2000 to their number of 107 today, which I don't believe. It's much higher than 107. It's probably 100. It may be 200. If you used a 4% discount rate or 4 1/4, it'd be 200 million.
So back to where we need to be on May the 2nd, is that the town meeting? What's your position on the articles that are currently?
I think you should raise this to 1%. That would be close to what was contributed last year, would show good faith that the town is serious about it. And
Raise the funding by 1%?
To almost 2 million. So
By
Andrew's
1%.
suggesting a 0.5%,
Yeah.
and you're suggesting 1%, which would come to almost 2 million.
Yes.
Okay, so one of the things that we haven't fully explored on our agenda, but I want to toss it out there in case you haven't already heard it, is that the savings in health insurance this year, because this is health insurance related, and it's just the town hasn't previously stepped up and responsibly addressed it, and here we have savings rather than continuing to expand our operating budgets and increase the number of people who we're going to be obligated to insure. And maybe we better say it stops now and use the health insurance savings as an additional contribution to this year's OPEB.
And that's what, just so you guys, you know, we have a difference between the town manager's recommendation for the school budget and.
I heard that.
And one of the things to make that gap go away is to take the savings from the health insurance and apply it to this operating budget for the school, $500,000.
Because
is one of the things being.
Half to the town.
Well, there wasn't, we don't know what's going to happen.
Have you decided what you're going to do with the rest of it?
So we got to be clear about what actually is the rest of it. So there's two issues. So we budgeted an 8% increase. A percent has about a value of $170,000. So each percentage that we may be able to save obviously results in a lot of money. So I know this is going to come up later in Donna's presentation, but there's two things we have to face. So we know we're going to have to share 25% of it pursuant to Section 22 with the PEC and the groups that are represented through the PEC. So that's 2%. So it's not going to be an 8% savings. We're at 6%. Depending on what the balance is and the trust, now that we're self-insured, if the balance is essentially below 1 month worth of claims, we may have to increase it additionally in order to maintain that level of 1 month of claims. Correct, Donna? So it could, we could be at a 4% increase. A 4% increase would be for $680,000. So the whole savings would be about an additional 620. So,
Don't go spending it before you know what it is.
exactly.
Why not?
That's my thought. So, one thing that we're realizing in real time is that in every month, often I know we don't have months considering we're 6 weeks away from town meeting. Every month when we review the status of the trust, we had a bad January, we had a better February. So that obviously, from a trajectory perspective, has an impact on what we think we may need moving into next year in terms of an increase. But the two may be a 4 or 5%. So that's something we're trying to get a handle on, and we're going to continue to try to get a handle on. And based on what we know at April 1st, we'll make those final decisions.
And I do want to just remind my fellow committee members that we were feeling more conservative on this last year in terms of, not wanting to take a lot of risk when we don't know what those claims are going to be, so.
Well, right now
Yes.
we're over, right? About 400,000+ through February, so. It strikes me that the arguments about, it's just really mind-boggling, but the arguments about, if we're funding it at a higher level, that then we're taking away the pressure for somebody to do reform. But we can't control what the state legislatures can do. We can control what we can control.
Right.
And one thing we can control is plan design. That's awesome. And the other thing is starting to fill the hole. And
Premium contributions.
And premiums, we didn't talk about.
And eligibility, right? We haven't
Right.
talked about that at all.
but can we? I don't know. Can we control that stuff?
Well, my plan, which you see,
Yeah.
is meant to raise premium contributions to the 50% level allowed by law from where we are now. Which when
But we can't do that.
we can
unilaterally.
yes, we can.
We
That
can.
is within the control of the Board of Selectmen. We can do that beginning July 1 of this year if we chose to.
If they don't pass that.
No,
moratorium.
no, the moratorium does not apply to us. That was something we
For
thought may have
retirees.
applied.
For just retirement.
For retire, we're talking about OPEB now.
So your legislation
Right.
concern is no, that doesn't exist?
The moratorium concern that we had does not apply to us. We found that out kind of later in the process as we were going through.
But
So,
I mean, not funding at the higher level is just putting a much bigger burden on those that come after us.
Yes.
We're not facing the reality of the situation that's here.
I'm just trying to get it back to where we were, because it's going to be very hard to sell. I mean, we got 50 retirees that come to our meetings every week, and they're angry with us because they feel that you're going to be doing reform on their backs, and then at the same time you're cutting your contributions in half.
Yeah, I guess another way to look at it, and maybe this is self-serving because I've been talking about this, that we can plot the collision course when our fixed costs, debt service, retirement, and healthcare, are going to eat up so much of our budget. That's coming. That day is
we
coming.
know that trajectory.
I want to
Yeah,
hear.
but we're not-
Can we hear? There has to
But
have
we're
been
not-
models run that
But
tell
we're
us
just
when.
kicking that can down the road.
Max Array did a schedule for me. It's a year old, showing that over the next 15 years, we're going to have to let 30% of our workforce go. It's taking your revenues.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's got too many moving pieces, assuming how many new hires, and it's got a lot of variables.
But I think the bottom line is, we've got an obligation, that's not going away. You're not gonna legislate that away, it's there, that bucket is there. So I don't.
But what's the number?
To Greg's point.
When you think about this, we could take the $2 million number, right? One, where are you going to find the money? Where in the budget are you going to find it?
Health insurance
You have to
savings.
start.
Well, I mean,
Bob, you have to
so
start finding
that-
it because we're not too many. I mean, this retirement cost is going up a compound annual rate over 5 years of 11%. If that keeps on going, we're going to have to find money. You should start now.
well,
We need to start finding the money.
Well,
now.
that's true, but I mean, as you know, I've been talking about this for years, starting the floor town meeting, to say it's not about filling the hole. It's about stopping the dig. We have to reform.
Both.
That's where
Well,
this.
it's both.
And I would think we've been
the
pretty
whole is
consistent, we have
far
to do it.
more, far
Move
more
on
than
all
stopping the dig.
fronts. Move on all fronts. So everything that you said sounds
Yep.
great. Why wouldn't we want to take steps on all fronts.
Well,
the
I think
big-
everyone would be in agreement, steps on all fronts. I think the difference is
Emphasis.
the how much, what
Yes.
percentage.
And if I may
That's the
very,
difference.
very quickly, mechanically, everything that's included in Tom's slides and Bob made mention too in terms of the rates and the impact, I agree with. But just to compare the two, there's an appearance of a $300 million difference between the 357 and the 652. The 357 assumes that we'll serve free cash at the highest level that we've done in the past 10 years and then use 25% of it, 1.25, because that was included in the last actually every single year.
Right.
And
one-
1.25.
No, I think it was lower
Everybody
than
likes you
Yeah, yeah.
moving it out of free cash
Yeah,
into
no, there's
general.
no-
Right, but
No,
I think
I get that, but
I
I'm
think
just
you're
saying.
making a different point. I think you're making the point that the number, if the free cash isn't as high, wouldn't have been the same as last year.
I'm just saying the 652 and the 357 would be closer.
Yeah, so I guess that
Neither number's
whether
good,
we
we
match
agree.
last year, because, maybe last year was a little higher, I think you're
Year before
concerned
was
about.
1.7 million.
Yeah, and I think you're concerned about the more dramatic drop. Can I just ask a question? What does that number, if you don't, this is the numbers on the right column are actually all based on the current funding plan, right?
Yeah.
So forget that, so many things changed over the left to the right. So what if you did your funding plan? What does that number become?
I'm not an actuary, but that 652 would probably drop down to about 525.
Well, there's a
Gives me warm and
comforting
fuzzies.
thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But
That's-
see, that's exactly the point.
But the
That's
thing
exactly
is,
the point.
But the thing is, if you brought it up to 6 million, then it'd be zero. And I know it's impossible today, but, one of the recommendations we have in our plan is that the town has to come up with a funding schedule to start paying down this debt. You cannot have a $652 million debt in 30 years, because you're going to also have all the other infrastructure debt, you're going to have the pension debt, and you're going to be talking about close to $1 billion.
Will the
But-
OPEB
so
report
what
put a
I'd
value?
like to suggest, that I suggested at a prior meeting, is that as part of our plan to increase our funding, is that if we add a new employee, and that could be a replacement employee, but when we add a new employee, we fund the normal cost for that employee.
We have that as a
That gets back to
recommendation.
stopping the digging. Over time, you are
Well-
gonna pay off that existing liability, because you're paying as you go every year.
Yeah, but I
But-
wouldn't confuse funding with stopping the digging, because that's funding. It's a valid suggestion. I think the OPEB committee is going to recommend that, but that's still funding. That's not reform.
Right, but
Stop
what
the
it
digging is
what
reform.
it does is attack the way that we got here in the first place.
Exactly.
We got here in the first place by not funding the benefits earned by an employee in the year when they earned it.
But Joanne, your suggestion is not going to reduce the 652, because any new employee is added to that number. This is just for existing employees.
But I'm saying that if you have existing employees that you're replacing, not just
No, but you-
additional employees,
But
but
you guys,
whenever
can do
you
that.
replace, whenever somebody new is hired, whether it's a replacement or an additional employee, that if we would start, and that starts small, because we don't add that many each year, but that starts small, but over time, at least you're not digging the hole deeper with each new person that comes on. And it forces some discipline into the system.
Yeah,
That's-
I know the OPEB committee is going to recommend that. It's not necessarily a bad idea, but again, it focuses on funding in the whole as opposed to stopping the digging. If you reform it with premium contributions as an example, our plan design is going to help. Premium contributions, that's $1.3 million, $1.3 million a year. When you take $1.3 million a year out of the future cash flows, you're going to see that liability come down quite a bit. We're going to be we have Siegel working on that scenario now, so you can see the $184 million come down dramatically, assuming you implement those retiree contribution changes to the 50% that
This
other
premium
communities are.
contribution that the Board of Selectmen can do unilaterally?
Yes, yes.
When are you going to do that?
Well, my board doesn't want to talk about this until the OPEB Advisory Committee report comes out on March 31st.
And there's a meeting scheduled on March 31st to discuss.
And then
Begin
we
discussing
have
that.
just so everybody here knows, the Finance Committee reports schedule. That's a Thursday that we hear the OPEB, official OPEB report. The next day is the deadline for submitting material for this year's Finance Committee report, which goes to the printer following Tuesday.
Which is why I've been asking my board to start talking about this, even in principle, get it on the issue, get the issues, and they have refused to talk about it because they feel it would be inappropriate, rude, pick your adjective,
Yeah, well, so
to
we-
wait for the OPEB advisory committee report to come out.
Andrew, could I ask you a quick question? I just want to make sure I'm clear on the current policy. When you say 0.5% of budget, is that like all revenue with the exception of?
It's the adjusted budget, and
exempt
it's the same calculation we're using when we talk about a percentage of the capital budget. Because I want to apply
Right.
percentages across the board to the same number.
Andrew, you
So,
applied 0.4 though this year, not 0.5.
because I couldn't have gotten to 0.5 and balanced the budget based on everything else that needed to be.
So that's your goal, your personal goal is to get it to 0.5.
The 0.5, and if we can make it 0.6 and 0.7 as we move forward, we'll talk about doing that. I mean, I agree that we need to fund aggressively but responsibly, given all the other things that need to happen in real time.
I'm just curious, I want to sure I understand this the premium contribution thing.
Yep,
So the Board of Selectmen today can
Yep.
make a decision unilaterally
policy, yep.
that would lower the cost by 1.3 million. a year.
1.3 million, if we implement it all year one, which we probably wouldn't do, we'd probably phase it in over 3 years, but if you raised it from current premium contribution levels to lowered the town's contribution down to 50%, once fully implemented, that is a $1.3 million savings every single year in the budget, and that increases because premiums increase by a few percent every year, so the savings is far more than 1.3 per year over the long run. So that is within the control of the Board of Selectmen, and I'm going to be encouraging them to adopt that, maybe phase it in over a couple-year period so it's not all at once. But the other part of my report, which gets to eligibility, is I'm suggesting that we consider a longer period of implementation, but only if the retirement board, which we have no control over, agrees to change some eligibility rules. We have no leverage on them. This gives us leverage. They can say no. They're independent. They've said no to even the most modest changes that even Tom supports, part-time service credits. So they've been, I think, defiant on changing eligibility rules. This is a way we could say, we have control over premium contributions. We will implement them over this time period. We will consider an easier time period, extend it out a bit, in exchange for some consideration on perhaps raising the bar up from 20 to 30 hours. The OPEB Advisory Committee shares that view.
Will they value that?
Pardon me?
They're doing an evaluation, you said, on the premium contribution change, and will that be in the OPEB committee's
No-brainer.
report?
I don't know.
I just want to understand if we'll have values on
here
this.
saying,
So
we're talking about how we balance budgets, we don't have enough money for this and for that, and we have $1.3 million that we could.
That's exactly right.
I don't,
That's exactly
I don't
right.
understand it.
Holy cow.
That's
So-
exactly right. The
I
board.
don't understand why
Why
that
would
change
people
wasn't made after the
suddenly
last
balk at
OPEB.
that? I mean,
Before
why
it
would,
uses
what is it that makes that hard to do? What
Because
makes
the
that hard to do
is the
is that you
Wait.
have a bunch of retirees with very, very small pensions. And for them to see their health insurance costs increase by that amount is difficult, and it's also hard for an elected official who's gonna have a room full of employees, and retirees, when they're making this decision. It's very hard to do, because
Can I respond to
hurts
that?
people. That's why.
Well, you guys,
If I could just respond to that, because I'd like to know, which
Bob.
retirees are we worried about, though? It's not just town school retirees. There's a lot of retirees in this town that didn't retire from a town or school or government,
I understand
that end
that.
up paying full boat for their Medicare, their Part B premiums, their Medicare. In fact, a non-town school retiree that has to go to Blue Cross Blue Shield's website and buy a Medicare plan is going to pay more for a worse plan, even if we change it to 50% premium contribution. So even if we lower the bar to 50%, retirees in town are still getting a far better deal than the other retirees in town. So when we talk about what's fair to retirees, think about what's fair to all retirees in town, not just those that happen to retire from the town and school.
in the
I'm
interest of
just gonna
time.
say that I agree with your I agree with that statement. But that doesn't make it any easier to look at the person who's gonna tell you they can't afford that, and know that that person maybe worked for the town for many, many years, and is now trying to survive on a pension that's very, very small because they retired a long time ago, and all of a sudden, you're going to have to ask them to pay more. It's much easier to do some of this stuff prospectively than it is.
But you could look at the same retiree that doesn't work for the town and school that's suffering from the same exact issue, except they're paying full premium for their Medicare supplemental.
Don't certain shows have like a mute button?
You gotta mute them.
In the interest of time, I mean, thank you guys both for coming. It's almost 8:20. So
It's unheard of for us to go over our agenda with Chairman Stump.
Yeah.
Because the clock's not on the wall.
Well, I think that we all knew that this was a discussion that we wanted to have.
Yes.
Does everyone feel like we got a lot of information tonight?
Oh,
We
yeah.
can move on to our next topic.
Yeah, this is,
Thank you
it's
for
very helpful.
Thank you guys very much for coming and sharing your information.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
All right, so warrant articles. The chairs meeting, which we stopped talking about, I didn't really have much, we already talked about. The timing of the school committee, as far as like when a school committee or when a vote's going to be taken. The school committee is meeting tomorrow night, and they're going to be discussing the high school schedule and trying to make a decision on the high school schedule and whether to go forward with that. So that'll be tomorrow night. Then on the 23rd, at the high school, is there a parents' meeting at the high school, I think on the 23rd?
I don't know.
Yeah, and that's where the principal needs to know what to present at that.
Oh, that'd be the 8th
Yeah,
grade.
that would be the new students. They have to start scheduling now for next year. So this is putting the school in a very bad situation. That's what that is.
So I think.
I have a senior, so I'm not going to any meetings, but yes.
It's probably like 30 years you.
Oh, there you go.
But anyway, yes.
So that's.
there's a crunch
Yeah,
here.
so that's why the school committee tomorrow night's going to be
Making that.
discussion about the high school schedule.
And what is their current gap? I'm just wondering what gap is in their head as they're making this decision between the town manager budget and the school?
Oh,
there was
it's 1.8 million.
Okay,
1.8.
so, but there have been some move,
Well, for example, the health insurance, the 500,000,
There's a possibility.
that's a possibility, but we've also talked about for OPEB, so how do we?
so none of that it's still 1.8,
Well-
no agreement?
Still
Yeah,
1.8,
and
no
we,
decision.
today, we, the school identified some reductions that they could make in their request, and we're getting within striking range, I guess, but then again, the question comes up, like tonight, we had the discussion about, should we fund more money for OPEB, or should we not? And then also the question of the health insurance, will the health insurance savings be there, will it not? There's all these, should we or should we not spend the circuit breaker reserve to zero? So there's a lot of.
We haven't earmarked, like, 500,000 of health insurance savings has not been earmarked for the school.
Absolutely not.
suggested.
Well,
You would be
It's
taking
just-
a vote on a final budget number or changes in the proposed town manager's published budget as we get closer, like we always do, Article
Yeah.
4 comes, goes.
Well, and again, back to the purpose of the chairs meeting, it's not to make decisions, it's not to do any of it, just to talk and share ideas and concepts. And just so you know, we've tried to do that. This morning was our 16th meeting. 16th meeting. So, at the end of the town meeting, after town meeting, if someone says that, we weren't talking, at least we could say we tried to talk. 16 times. I think we've been doing pretty.
We certainly have, and I think we're making progress, and I think there is a road to a consensus budget, but
Yeah.
that road is obviously subject to the consideration of the school committee, the board of selectmen, and the finance committee.
In years past, I think I recall a meeting at, I don't know, was it at the Public Safety Center? I mean, sometimes the boards got together and attempted to discuss
A tri-board?
things. No, yeah.
And
I don't know if
just from a meetings perspective, the Board of Selectmen are meeting on the 21st of April and the 23rd of
You mean
April.
March or April?
Oh, is it-
March.
March. so
March.
21st, 23rd, 28th, 31st, 4th, maybe the 6th.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And we're
in our
together with the
schedule, we
20.
have the 21st as a joint meeting, but evidently, the Board of Selectmen doesn't think that Monday's a joint meeting.
Oh.
we've had a lot of miscommunication between agenda items on the joint meeting. So, Christine, that's the newest information, right? It's Mondays, the Board of Selectmen is meeting by themselves. If we knew what the agenda was, do you guys have?
Yeah, so the agenda, I can send out the most, and I ask that everybody knows it's subject to change. The most recent warrant article tracking sheet that has some set dates on it
If we can
for
have that, 'cause
consideration.
if they're doing private warrant article presentations that we're gonna have to take a position in, it'd be good if we could be there. And if they're not, it'd be really good if we weren't there.
So there's right. So there's a lot of we have a draft agenda pretty much set, and all the warrant articles that are expected to be taken up on the 21st are capital articles.
Capital.
So that's going to be the majority, with a couple of the housekeeping articles that we would have done Monday, but we didn't have Donna on board, so we moved them to this Monday. So some housekeeping stuff, and then a lot of the capital articles, almost all the capital articles.
Are this coming Monday? That is
21st.
That is no longer a joint meeting?
It evidently is not a joint
It
meeting.
can be, but one thing that would be helpful to me is the Board of Selectmen needs to start taking votes on some of these things. So in my time here, it doesn't seem that a lot of votes happen at tri-board meetings or joint meetings. So we're running out of time. So
You wanna move it forward.
I'm going to ask the board to take votes on most of those on Monday.
The
So these
capital
are,
items.
Yes.
these have already been presented. There are no changes to what's already.
There's nothing that's changed.
Okay,
So
so
good,
that-
that's good for us.
Then these have
because-
been presented. It's not a new.
No new
presentation.
information.
Perhaps we should plan an agenda that takes up those same
Same
articles.
things.
On
Ourselves,
Monday,
on
in which
Monday.
case we have to post tomorrow, can we do that? Because we're running out of time too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
back to the capital articles. We talked at our last meeting about the town yard articles. And Peggy,
I sent off questions.
did you circulate? Okay,
Yes. Andrew's going to get back to us.
okay. So we're not in a position tonight to,
I didn't,
okay.
no, but he
So some
He
of
needs
the
a little
questions,
time.
I appreciate the questions. Some of the questions are going to be hard to put on the table to quantify. I have no, it's very hard. We have an idea, the cost centers that may increase as a result of moving the yard. What the exact cost will be is nearly impossible to quantify today. Also, it's hard to quantify some of the savings of efficiency gains of a brand new facility opposed to the facility we have today. So I can talk in general, and I would be curious to see if this is acceptable to the Finance Committee about what some of those areas are. And I'm happy to come to your meeting and talk about what some of those areas are. But I don't know if I'm going to say it's going to cost X more, because it's going to be very difficult to quantify that today. Does that make sense?
Would some of that be clarified in the initial plan design? Or is that just strictly mechanical, engineering, architectural
So-
stuff? Or are efficiencies also included in that initial?
So indirectly, yes, I think it'll be included, or it'll be easier to talk about, and I'll tell you why. So part of the design process will be configuring the actual facility. So we'll have a very firm handle on what's going to 5 Campanella Docks, based on once we start going through a true design and engineering phase. And once we have some of those questions answered, and we have a pretty good handle on who's going where and what's going where, I would be more apt to basically quantify the impacts. Does that make sense?
So another question we had was on a 20-year debt schedule rather than a 30-year debt schedule. Is that something you would?
We can do that easily. We've done it. We can give it to you at any point in which you would like it. But to be clear, and I think everybody knows, the bond authorization is still, would be providing town meeting for affirmative favorable action on the 3 warrant articles, would be at least 6 months away.
That would be the special meeting.
Right. So we do have some time, I think, to talk about that. But I'm happy to show you what 20, 25, and 30 years is. 30 years is just about that $900,000 number. Obviously, it goes up.
And as long as we're sort of doing random scheduling things, Wednesday is definitely a Finance Committee meeting, next Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 23rd, not 20th.
Thank you. Yeah, the 23rd, and we've asked the superintendent and Joel to attend so that we can ask all the questions that didn't happen at the joint meeting during the budget presentation. So-
Are we still talking, this morning we talked about a meeting with the TIF presentation. Are we still talking about that for Wednesday, or is that?
Yeah, so that's a real meeting.
Oops.
So things are happening in real time. So we, myself, basically a working group consisting of myself, Director of Planning, Director of Finance, Director of Assessing, Joanne from the Finance Committee, Mary O'Donoghue from the Board of Selectmen, Joan Duff from the Planning Department, have been meeting very regularly, once a week, at least once a week, internally and with representatives from Pfizer on the request for a TIF. And it's been a bit of an accelerated schedule because not us as a town, but Pfizer and the Andover team is competing with Chesterfield, Missouri, which is a suburb of St.
Really?
Louis. Yeah.
I lived in Chesterfield.
So
Tell them that they don't want, tell them that's not a good place for them.
So
You left.
So we've been working in real time because the town meeting will have to take ultimately town meeting will have to take action on this, but we've been trying to provide them with an opportunity to compete for the project, which is about 150 to 200 million in investment, 26 million in what would essentially be taxable value. So we had a significant gap of what they were looking for and what the group was essentially willing to even come forward with to the boards and committees, but through the great work of the working group, we got to a proposal that I certainly think is reasonable and would provide a significant benefit to the town over time. So because we got to that point, the project, by the way, is already permitted by the planning board, so they're ready to go from that aspect. We had hoped to capitalize on some existing meetings we have already and have a tri-board with the board, 1 hour informational session, the Finance Committee, the Board of Selectmen, and the Planning Board at 6 o'clock on the 23rd to at least get the initial information out there. Pfizer will do their presentation. I will talk a bit about the financial aspects related to the request.
So this would be Wednesday, March 23rd.
It's 6, from 6 to
In what
7.
room?
6 to 7
In this room?
here, right, Andrew?
Room to be determined.
Determined.
I think, if provided we can fit everyone in here, that's fine, because that we have a swearing-in ceremony at 5.
Oh, right.
We have that at 6, and then we have a regular Board of Selectmen meeting at 7.
So
So
maybe
the Board
we
of
could do-
Selectmen are meeting on the 23rd, then
Yeah.
we need to reserve the little room across the hall for,
Or the one on the second floor.
or
Or
somewhere.
the second, in this building,
Oh,
In this building,
So
that'll
we
be
can just
yeah.
go to the first hour and then go to our.
across the hall.
Yeah.
And that's Wednesday.
So,
Okay.
are we done scheduling?
I wanted to know if on the 31st, when the OPEB report is that being discussed or presented?
I think there'll be both. So I think there'll be a presentation, and then I think we'll go directly into discussion, and it is the only agenda item.
And
That's-
is already thought to that being a joint meeting?
Is that 7
Or we
PM?
could just attend it.
Yeah, we could also just attend it.
That's at 7 PM.
The other
That's
thing that's
Thursday.
happening on the 23rd, and again, this is happening in real time based on the availability of consultants, at the regular Board of Selectmen's meeting, is Woodard and Curran will come back and answer some of the questions that were asked the last time they were here. We had put a stake in the ground at that meeting for the 23rd, and they're able to meet that deadline. So I don't know if for part of that meeting, we can talk about it now, the Finance Committee does want to join the board.
Because all these things, everyone's very aware of when our report goes to the printer, and we want to have as many decisions made as possible. And we also know that something like a TIF, you're not going to get a vote the same meeting you
Right.
present it. You're going to have to let people listen and think about it and, you know, vote on it the next meeting or whatever. So we knew it had to be next week. There wasn't any more time, you know. It was the only way of getting.
That's okay, we're good. 6 is good for TIF, then.
So have you got all the scheduling things?
No, I don't. What's the last one? The other one on the 23rd? So we've got Selectmen, FinCom, the 6 o'clock TIF, and what's the last one?
5 o'clock, maybe of interest.
swearing
The swearing in.
It's gonna be the
Swearing
It's at
in
5.
for the new.
Yeah, yeah, for the newly elected.
boards.
So we're just gonna bring our sleeping bags.
No, but what was the other agenda item also on the same day?
Oh, yes,
there was.
and
Water.
Water.
Oh,
and
water.
sewer.
It's almost a whole meeting dedicated to water.
The selectmen's meeting is dedicated to water.
Yes, okay, so that's
And-
round 2 in the rate setting study.
Right. And then I presume we will be taking a vote on the 28th for the a meeting the first week in April. But to my initial comment, the board is gonna start taking votes because
But the
Right.
rate setting study is not coming to town meeting, right? The water rates, I mean, you set the water rate, but it doesn't affect the capital projects at town meeting.
So it won't affect the project per se, but it may have an impact to the water source budget.
As far as the use of reserves,
Potentially the use of reserves.
Revenues?
Again, we
Anticipated
assume
revenues on the tiered system.
the revenue impact of a tiered system. So will there be a substantial change for FY17? I don't think so, but could there be a change? Yes.
Does it have to be explained in the finance committee report?
It depends on what it is. If
There's
it's a
no change,
I mean,
nope.
I think yes, some of it is going to have to be explained, but whether it affects the positions we take, maybe not. You
well,
know.
especially before the book goes to printing.
Right.
If the-
Well, but
the-
no, but I mean, if there is a decision by the Board of Selectmen that makes a significant change in our water rates and the way we're doing it and everything, that should be explained in our report. We should have a page for it or something, But will it affect, I think we all had an introduction to it, so I'm not sure if we have to go into more detail as a full committee, unless there's something that really makes big changes in the budget votes,
Right. I think that there's 3 pivot points: tiered rate, single rate, and do we have agreement on the appropriate level of funding for capital moving forward?
And use of reserves.
And the reserves are part of the budget.
So
Which we vote on that.
Yeah, we vote on,
So we don't have to be at that, listen to that presentation. If there's something that comes out that surprises us, we can go back and watch the reruns. Is that?
Yeah, I don't
Because
think we
we're
need
planning
to
to have
be
our
there.
own meeting.
It'll be
right?
taped, so we can do that.
Okay.
All right.
You know what, so one more thing, if there are handouts, if there's
We're
additional.
we're trying to talk about the next 2 weeks in scheduling.
But Andrew, you know how they had the initial handouts that was really helpful? So if there's another set of documents that come
We'll
out
distribute.
on the water sewer thing on the next meeting, or any, or the TIF,
Yeah.
or all of it,
Are you okay with the scheduling items?
I have it.
So
Okay,
I
good.
have one more question for you, which are the questions we sent to you, which I think will make a difference on the warrant even, because you had said, ask comments on the warrant. Somebody had asked that the 900,000 be a separate warrant article, get pulled out of Article 5?
I'm fine with that.
So we can, and that will affect our votes of where that money is, so.
Yeah,
that will-
and
that
the
will-
time, they'll be close together, and they'll be
Yeah, we asked that the 3
Yeah.
articles.
They make sense for them to be together.
So is that the large capital mitigation fund from free cash? What's that? I forget the wording of it.
So the mitigation fund is just, all that I'm requesting town meeting action on is to send a special act or home rule petition to the legislature that would allow us to create it.
But there's a
No,
dollar
there's-
amount listed
but
here,
that
or
one,
blank,
if
isn't
you
there?
look at the tracking sheet, it's crossed off.
Oh, is it? Oh, I didn't.
There should be no dollar amount with it.
Okay.
There's
I
dollar
didn't-
amount with 2 things: design and engineering, purchase of 5
Okay, okay.
And then when are the selectmen planning on voting on accepting the warrant, signing off on it?
Good question.
Not till that report goes to the
I know what
printer.
this is. I'm saying, wait a minute, I'm counting the all-nighters, and it still doesn't work.
It's, we talked through this today. It will be probably the first meeting in April. But I don't think there's
Need
gonna be
those numbers.
substantive changes, so that's.
But we
Is
need
this
the numbers, we
different
need the order.
Than we've ever been?
Yes.
Yes.
This is?
This
What's the
particular issue
difference?
is.
We need the numbers for the finance committee report, the warrant numbers.
No, that's not, but that's not really
The
what,
deadline
what
for
we're
input
talking
is the
about. We're
first.
talking about the warrant, the articles,
Right.
okay? The order they're in and which ones are actually going to be inserted.
Yes.
You know, so,
Yeah.
right now, you see a P list that obviously has not been put in any order.
It's only ordered as the way they came in.
Right, it hasn't, but in terms of meeting planning,
Mm-hmm.
it hasn't been put in any order. So, usually, by right around now, if not last week, we have the final order with the final numbers to work from. But we won't, I'm hoping that we, even if the selectmen haven't actually signed it, that we will have something ahead of the time that they sign it, so we have something to work from.
Right, I would like to have something concrete for the purposes of your report without potentially having the 5 signatures. I don't think there's gonna be reordering happening on the 4th. That's,
All right.
So,
Greg, the timing of the articles for the 3 articles for the town yard, just
Yeah.
so that they're like 12, 13, 14 versus P44.
One that buried in Article
Yeah,
on
I'm
the
just
other
thinking
one.
in past years though, at this time of the year, I don't feel like we're any further behind or I feel like we're right where we normally are, aren't we?
Yeah,
No.
there's just a lot of dynamics, perhaps a few more dynamics this year. Would that be?
He means people
For
on
the
our
big
committee who
budget
have
things.
too much to say.
Hey, listen, real quick, are you guys ready to move on to like warrant articles?
Yep.
Before we do that, make sure, inside story here, that Pfizer knows about the Chesterfield Flats. And if they're going into Chesterfield Flats, to be aware of the flooding that happens in Chesterfield Flats.
gee, should have known that this
we
morning.
should have brought you, John.
All right, you guys ready to move on? Thanks a lot.
John, excuse me, I have to leave.
Yep.
I've got some spreadsheets for you on OPEB premium contribution modeled out over 3 years. I just want
Oh,
to leave with
great.
you. So you can, what we talked about tonight, I have some copies just for you to look at.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
Could you send electronically as well?
I can email it to you as well.
Yep.
I'll leave hard copies for
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks for coming.
So,
Yes.
so we've done, let's see how many, 1, 2, 3, 4. We've already done 4 articles we voted last time.
Out of 55.
Yeah, out of
53,
50.
just in case we
Yeah,
didn't
50.
learn.
Are you
So-
through with the chairs? The update on the chairs? Did everything?
Oh, I
did you
think so.
finish?
Yeah, the meeting, did I finish my update on the chairs?
Yeah.
I think so.
We
Yeah.
do seem,
All right, so,
Are we-
then, as far as free cash articles, can we look at all those to see if there's any we can take position on? Like, what about P22, free cash to bond premium stabilization fund? That's just a switching of the money, right? Okay. You guys know, that's where the,
Yes,
that's a standard annual recurring one, that's simply moving it from free cash to the stabilization fund. Is there a motion on that one?
what's the number?
P22.
I make a motion to
What's the
approve.
dollar number?
216?
268.
268?
1,000.
268,000, okay.
This is how the minutes get in without the 1,000.
I make a motion to approve P22, free cash to bond premium stabilization funding amount of $268,000.
From free cash, and it's recommend approval at town meeting as opposed to us approving.
Right.
Okay.
Second?
Second? Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. 6, 7, 8, 0.
Hey, we're up to 8.
8-0, okay. All right, were there any other ones prior to that?
Well, then the next one's
Isn't there a
See,
related
bonds,
one?
Premium Stabilization Fund 2 debt service.
Yeah, where's that?
Oh, is that 21?
23.
No,
That was
no,
the-
where's it?
Mine says deleted.
Yeah,
Here's
21.
bond stabilization to general fund.
Where's,
Is 23.
it was right next to it.
23, that, I guess that's what I was thinking.
23 stabilization fund bond.
To general fund, is it still the same amount?
Oh, it's way down on the
268,000?
bottom of this one.
100,000.
100,000.
Stabilization, oh, okay.
Okay, so I move the board vote to recommend approval of Article P23 in the amount of $100,000 to move $100,000 from the bond premium stabilization fund to the general fund to offset non-exempt debt interest payments or take any other action related thereto.
I'll second.
Second, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? 8-0. Okay. Back up to the top then, because those two are kind of related.
The ones that we couldn't do last time because we needed balances from Donna?
Oh, yes. The revolving funds, we wanted to talk to Donna about.
Just go back to the top where you wanted to go, John.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we just, all right, so P31 is a student learning initiative. Is that one we need to talk more about? That's $400,000 for the computers for
I
the
think
schools learning
let's
initiative.
do that after the school presentation in case there are questions on Wednesday about it.
Okay.
Have we done that in past years?
I-
Or
I-
is this one-to-one?
We should probably talk about this one,
Later.
because
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
vision for the learning initiative and the one-on-one, probably we need to have more
Yeah,
information on
that is different than.
Yeah. What about the elementary school projectors, $200,000, P32?
I mean, it's IT maintenance that,
I don't know if anybody feels that they need more information on that. I think this is replacement of very old equipment with much better technology, so I would.
So do you propose a motion?
I do, I actually move that, give me the wording for recommend town meeting approval.
do you want me to just do it? I move the board
Yeah.
recommend approval of Article P32 to raise by taxation transfer, et cetera, the sum of $200,000 for the purpose of providing elementary school projectors.
This thing says
No,
free
but we're
cash.
recommending it come from free cash. So that's from available funds.
Oh, yeah,
We're
this is free
recommending that it
cash.
come from free cash.
All of these ones we're going to talk about are all free cash.
Okay.
right now.
All right.
So
Well-
from free cash?
Moved from free cash.
Okay. So second, any other discussion?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? 8-0. Okay, good. What about town and school energy initiatives?
Number?
P33. And again, these are from free cash
Okay,
as well.
free cash.
400,000.
$400,000. Do we need more information?
I think it saves us money in the long run.
What do you think, Donna? You think it's a good
Yeah.
idea?
Yeah.
Okay, I move that the board vote to recommend approval of Article P33 to appropriate $400,000 from free cash for the town and school energy initiatives.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? 8-0. Okay, good. What about the Dearman Park ball field lighting? Do we need to talk more about that?
Probably not.
Let's,
I don't think I ever got the original contract,
Yeah.
although Bonnie, somebody forwarded the Little League's comments about what they believe was originally specified, and they said no.
Yeah,
It wasn't
I think
meant to be there.
Their contribution was the 75,000 that brought it from what we saw in a previous estimate of 275 to this 200. And they also, in that communication, they were reminding everybody, and I just saw it, I don't think I was the source of it, but I think they were reminding everybody that they make other contributions, they pay fees, they
Well,
support the
and
field.
one of my
otherwise.
reservations was, it was something that we told town meeting a couple of years ago, that, when we asked for money to build the fields, and then the next year we were gonna come back and ask for more money to pave the lot versus having the crushed stone that's there. And then the lighting issue came up, and so for me, it was kind of a principle thing that we said this. But what I've learned since the Saturday presentation, when this was first discussed, was things have changed. And and so I'm better with, if I'm I would vote in favor of it.
Yeah,
if-
they wore
if
me
somebody
down,
wants-
so I will too.
But I don't understand why. What changed?
The dynamics of the youth group I don't know enough about the dynamics of soccer, than it was huge in St. Louis. SLU, St. Louis University was ranked number 1 in the country for years. So soccer's very,
Soccer's big here
They
too.
ranked them what?
in college soccer.
How about Chesterfield?
Really?
St. Louis University, if you go back to when I was growing up, they were
Oh,
always
way
ranked
back
number
then,
1.
when nobody
Yeah.
else
So
had.
they tried to play in flats and there was a big puddle.
Good
But,
ladies.
so I don't, do you want to vote on it tonight or
Yes.
not?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, I
with voting
think
on it.
it's,
All right.
Lynn, would you do
I mean,
the
we need to have a
proper,
lighted field.
Ah, man, okay. So this is
wording.
another free cash one? All right.
Yes, and it's.
I move that the
P34.
board recommend approval of Article P34 to appropriate $200,000 from free cash for Diamond Park ball field lighting.
Been
A
made and
second.
second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you. I'm glad there's an opposing vote.
What about Campanelli Drive? Do you want to wait on, do all of the,
Yes.
6-2, John?
that's,
No.
that's 7-1,
7-1?
So,
right? 'Cause
Where,
I don't, am I?
That's the last item in free cash.
the acquisition of
Yeah.
Campanelli Drive for
Yeah.
$2,250,000.
what's the number?
From free cash?
P44 from
So
free
why
cash.
was I thinking it was 200?
Shouldn't we be discussing all three of those town yards?
Yeah.
At the
together?
same
Yeah, I
time?
think so.
Okay, so we won't do that one. All right.
It's our question.
And, so, and one more, is there neighbor's land included in this or not?
It is not.
No. Okay, so I had the 2 million wrong, it's 2.25?
2 and a
It has
quarter.
always been that, okay.
Is there additional cost for the neighbors?
All right, so
It
you
would,
want
it would
to,
be a separate negotiation with.
Hold and do all three.
yeah, we'll wait, okay. What about the Public Works vehicles? You guys want to go down to the non-exempt group? Do we need any more information on the request for $350,000 for Public Works vehicles, P25?
Thank you.
No.
No, that's a good,
No.
that's a good one to vote.
Okay.
And
is
what's
there-
that by?
P25
What's the
is from
source?
non-exempt borrowing.
Okay. All right.
So-
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article P25 to appropriate from, from non-exempt debt.
Borrow?
Non-exempt borrowing. The sum of $350,000.
Let's see, it's not
Bonding?
appropriate from non-exempt.
Raise? No.
Raise from borrowing, yeah.
Raise from non-exempt borrowing. Okay. No fear changing the wording partway through here. I
So
gotta-
there's a motion, is there a
Wait a
second?
minute, the
Second.
sum of
You're not finished.
$350,000
The amount, it has to be
For the Public Works
350,000,
vehicles.
Christine.
Second.
Second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Great. All right, what about
Excuse me, who seconded that?
Greg?
Greg?
What about the fire apparatus engine? $575,000, P26, Lynn?
So can I make a recommendation that we approve Article P26 in the amount of $575,000 through the raising of non-exempt debt? Borrowing for the purchase of the fire apparatus engine.
So I guess we wait for the second and then I have.
Second.
Second.
Second. Okay,
Second.
so this is the one where we're getting a custom fire engine. How much more are we paying for this custom fire engine that we wouldn't otherwise have to pay?
It's just-
We're gonna be,
Yeah, I don't think.
because it's going into a small garage essentially,
Right, I
right?
don't know if it's gonna be that additional extra, because, again, the what do you call it, like the pooling, the
Joint procurement.
procurement.
So it's actually, there's no real material difference in the cost.
Oh, good.
I mean, there's old firehouses all over the place. There are manufacturers who, there's not a bump up cab or whatnot.
Great.
So
Okay.
I don't think there's a material difference
Okay.
in cost.
You don't go off a used a lot and buy a fire engine, right? They kind of build them from scratch.
Right.
They're always built from, pretty much from scratch, with notwithstanding some once in a while things like an old model or whatnot that may work for you or not. But what MAPC did is, through FCAM, the Fire Chiefs Association, they did a joint procurement, meaning manufacturers are able to bid on a set of specs, a series of set of specs, and we're able to purchase off that. It's like a state bid, but for fire apparatus that was jointly procured.
So there are other people buying trucks of this size and shape?
Certainly are.
Yes, it's not just,
You okay? Fine?
Yeah.
So it's moved and seconded?
John moved, who was it
Yeah,
second?
Lynn
I seconded.
Okay, any other discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, 8-0, great. Town building and facility maintenance, P27, $700,000.
Which is pretty much where we've been, right? That's about the amount, okay.
It's less, actually,
A
right?
little less than.
We were $1.2 million, I believe, last year.
Okay.
This is P and F 6,
Mm-hmm.
right?
No.
No?
Doesn't say. It's
Hold on, we can figure that out.
220,
Is it not there?
We can figure it.
Yeah.
It is, you know.
Yeah,
6?
6, yeah.
Okay, next, like, major town projects was,
That would be after 7.
you know, I know there's not room, but I'd love to have past years on here.
Print gets too little.
I know. You need waffle paper.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article P27 to, in the amount of $700,000, to raise $700,000 from non-exempt borrowing for the purpose of paying costs of constructing, adding to, remodeling, et cetera, and equipping various town buildings and facilities, including any other costs incidental and related thereto.
And you said the amount.
I did say, didn't I? 700,000?
Good.
I
Yeah.
thought I did.
Yeah.
Second?
Second? Thanks, John. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? Okay, great. What about the facade, P28, at the Collins Center?
Oh, man.
$2 million.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean,
So, I
Do we-
have a,
The question came up about was it something that would be
Insurance.
covered from insurance, and the
I
answer to that,
thought it was
think-
pretty clear. Wasn't there a conclusion on that, that it would not be covered by insurance?
So that was an initial conclusion, and Donna, feel free to jump in. We hired our own envelope engineer, Russo Barr, who worked with worked with the town to help essentially establish grounds for an appeal. Without grounds, you can't appeal. So we think there may be a chance for some potential reimbursement through a claim, but the issue is that the claim will never come in time to reduce the request, if that makes sense.
So,
Yes.
it's-
Also,
yeah,
even if we got
It's gonna
reimbursement,
go
we'd
into
have
reason.
to appropriate the money.
Exactly.
We'd have to go to town meeting to
right.
appropriate
Right.
the
The whole
money.
amount.
If we get a reimbursement, do we then do something to appropriately handle where that money goes afterwards? Do we take action on that?
So I don't think you can retroactively offset the cost of this, but it'd be available to offset something. Right, Donna? I mean,
For a future capital project?
or appropriated offsetting expense.
Well,
or
if you haven't
instead of,
actually borrowed
instead
the
of,
money, you might be able to pay.
Right.
Oh, if
Pay
we
it
haven't
down
borrowed the
front.
money, you're right.
Right,
Right.
and
Right.
it takes a
Right.
while to
Yeah.
actually borrow sometimes.
so, the only comment I want to make, Janie sent this message on to the schools, and they came back, how much is the Collins Center used? Because, we're putting $2 million in, how much
Used
are
a
we?
ton.
Are we using it? And so what he said is it's used daily to support the performing arts at the high school, and we have more rental requests than we can support. Revenues in FY 2014 and 2015 were 241,000 and change, and 266,000 and change respectively. It is self-supporting with operating expenses, allowing carry forward balances between 35,000 and 49,000. So anyway, just some information about how it works. It just, is it possible, there's no way that we can have them cover 2 million, but should there be some, is operating expenses, should there be some maintenance expenses included in the rentals?
Should they be what?
But that has nothing to
Maintenance.
do with
No.
What does that got to do?
No, but this brings it to mind of,
Moving forward, would you look
But I thought we were talking about this
Yeah.
particular.
Well, we are, but I'm
We
just
are.
bringing up, so it brings up, why put two, if no one ever used it, why would we spend 2 million on it?
Oh, it's used a
So,
ton.
Right.
exactly, so it is being used, that I understand.
And
But
if they have more demand, could we in fact even potentially raise some of that, the
Well,
price,
that's
really,
what we
and
make
then
a
put some
motion.
money in capital? But that's not gonna address this 2 million.
No,
yeah,
it won't
so,
address.
Let's make a
so,
motion.
yeah, so.
Okay, yeah, I
the
moved that
2
the
million-
we ready?
Okay, to move on?
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article P28 to raise $2 million, to appropriate $2 million raised by non-exempt borrowing for the purpose of repairing the Collins Center facade replacement.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None? 8-0, good. What about the Lovejoy, P29, Lovejoy Field turf?
Lovely.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Turf replacement,
Jean
500,000.
Lovely.
500,000.
Yes. It's either 10 or 15 years old, right? It's time for replacement, it's been repaired.
It's 10 years old, it's at its useful life, and if you have kids playing sports in other towns, we're ready.
Yep. It has to be done, or we can't use it.
Really?
Can be repaired, it's been repaired. I guess they only live 10 years.
Right, my last act in Arlington was to replace the turf, and it was 10 years old, and it cost 500,000. So.
Yeah.
Well then, I move
so
that the
totally a
finance-
coincidence, or maybe not, but
Yeah.
All right, I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article P29 to appropriate $500,000 to be raised by non-exempt borrowing for the purpose of Lovely Field turf replacement.
I second in honor of Andrew Flanagan.
Is
Don't
there
put that
any
in
other
there.
discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay. Let's see.
How about if we went back to the ones that we didn't take positions on last time, the real simple ones at the beginning of the
Yep.
I tried that. I got,
Oh,
we couldn't
so-
find them.
warrant?
It's Article 16? No, sorry.
We only had 1, 2, 3 more.
Yeah, let's finish the non-exempt ones.
Non-exempt borrowing. I know
Okay.
that's OCD, but I'm on a list here, so
Yeah.
I lost my page. Where were we?
We're at
No.
P30,
P30, school building maintenance and renovation.
500,000.
I forget what that is.
Oh, that's the usual
That's just the
school
usual.
1
It's
and
less
2. Is
than
that school
usual.
1 and 2, or is that school building?
I think it's
P30.
less than usual because there are so many others
Other
from free
things.
cash.
Right, right.
You know, we're,
So, is this the one that has the textbooks on it?
No.
No.
Well, we do the schools all together, like those all together.
It was 455 last year, so it's
Okay,
pretty much,
similar.
yeah, something
So it's higher.
by 45. It's okay.
Okay.
I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article P30 to appropriate the sum of $500,000 to be raised by non-exempt borrowing for the purpose of paying costs of constructing, adding to, remodeling, reconstructing, and making extraordinary repairs to and equipping various school buildings and roofs.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, 8-0. Wait, we already did the track
We did.
replacement, didn't we? Oh, wait, what's,
Turf and track, 2 different things.
yeah, turf is 500, that's what we already approved.
Track's pulled.
Replacement
Track.
doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
35?
We already did that. It doesn't belong in the warrant.
Not there.
Yeah,
That's what I
yeah.
We did it last year.
That's already been done and paid for.
So 35 should be
We
canceled?
may have borrowed.
It is canceled,
Okay,
well, at least on this sheet.
Yeah.
It's
oh,
out.
okay,
It's out.
all right.
And then,
Then what about Ballardville Engine House improvements, P54, is that a
So are we
private
going to have
warrant?
someone come talk to us about that?
That's a-
No.
Is that a private warrant
It
article?
is,
Yes.
Yes.
It is. It's 3 million?
2,634,000.
on the
3 million
Yeah,
on
why,
this sheet.
Oh, it's 3 million?
yeah, I thought it said in the warrant, 3.
yeah, the warrant says 3 million.
Oh.
but it takes money from past articles, so it's,
Oh,
Okay.
okay, yes, you're right. But still, the whole project is,
I don't think we should take a position on a private article without hearing from the proponent.
yep.
All right, so we'll wait on that one.
Well, no,
So we gotta
but-
hear 'em again?
Yeah, are we, but do we have that scheduled?
Do we, will he be presenting it to the selectmen, and do you know when?
I don't know when, but he will be invited to a selectmen's meeting.
So is it possible that that will be after the Finance Committee report goes to press? Because otherwise
I-
it should be scheduled.
It will be our goal not, it will be our goal not to have that hearing before
Before,
we go to.
okay, before April 1st.
Right, that's the goal.
Can you invite us to that meeting, or else we have to, he
We
has
have
to come to
to
two
be here
meetings.
twice.
That's all.
Yeah, sure. So it's one of our last hearings. So that would be the first week of April.
And that's the day our book is the deadline, so.
Okay,
we'll
well,
just
so
do
we're
the
not
best
gonna,
we
we're not
can.
gonna do anything with that tonight?
No.
Okay, all right. So that takes care of all of the non-exempt borrowing with the exception of the Belleville engine house improvements. So Joanne, you wanted to go back to ones that we
The
previously...
little ones that we just didn't do, because we wanted some confirmation from Donna about where we stood with past appropriations and where the number in the article actually is just last year's number, or was there elderly
And I actually
transportation?
called and left a message
Oh,
for you.
those are all the same as prior year.
But how
Right.
much did we
But how much have we
use?
been spending? I mean, are we
Oh, okay.
spending that much, or
We
we?
definitely are, yeah.
Oh.
I'm thinking of maybe in future year having to increase it a little. Yep, I can give you like a history of that.
That's
But,
enough of an answer.
Yeah, but no,
Yeah.
your assessment is we've been spending it
Yep.
as we've
but who has
appropriated.
that list? Does
It's
anybody have?
It's P17. P17,
Elderly disabled
18, and 19. P17 was the Elder Disabled Transportation Program.
For 12,000.
Where is that? Is that out of,
P17 here and.
And it's taxation, right?
Yeah.
All right, I move that the Finance Committee recommend approval of Article P17 in the amount of $12,000 to be raised by taxation and appropriated to the Elderly Disabled Transportation Program.
Second.
second, moved and seconded, is there any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, 8-0.
Same question for supportive civic events.
P18.
For, in the amount of 5,000.
5,000.
How much did we really
P18.
spend?
I mean, is that about what we're spending? Is there?
We pretty much spend the whole thing.
And is that all on Andover Days, or is some of it for the park, do you know?
I believe it was pretty much all Andover days.
Is
And
that,
is that all detail?
does that cover those costs, or are we also supplementing that with other money that's in, like, the police budget or something?
I believe it covers it, but I'm not sure, so.
Well, and do the organizations that contribute, they organize? I mean, once upon a time, that was self-supporting before this fund was put in. So, you don't
Are
know.
we ready to vote?
So can I make
Yes.
a motion, Article P18, to the town will vote to appropriate and raise, how?
By taxation.
By taxation. The sum of $5,000 for the purpose of paying a portion of the municipal costs associated with civic events in the downtown.
Second.
Second, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, 8-0. And then the
Spring
P19.
Road.
Spring
Did we
Rose.
do Jerry Sullivan?
Yes.
We did
We
that.
We did that at the
We approved
meeting.
it?
We approved
We
it.
did,
Oh,
yeah.
good.
We were gonna wait till you were there, but we thought we would.
We did do
Go
some
forward.
stuff.
Thank you, yeah, thank you.
All right, what about
It was-
P19?
We wanted to know from Donna, the Spring Grove Cemetery maintenance, just the history, are they spent, is that being spent?
There's
Six
$6,000.
thousand.
Yeah.
I don't have that, I'll have to get it. I have to get that.
Oh, the dollar, it says 6,000.
Yep, you wanna know what the balance is.
Oh, okay.
Do we want to
Okay,
wait
well,
on
we'll
that?
just hold on
Yeah.
that still again.
So we're holding on that one?
Yeah.
Okay, holding on
Did
that
you
one.
approve revolving accounts?
No, because we did want to.
You need the amounts.
We have the amount.
No, the amount in the actual, this is
Oh.
interest from a trust, from a.
It's kind of like, where does this, where do we stand? We voted that much last year. Is that what we need? Do we need more? Do we need less?
Mhm.
You know.
Isn't there some sort of a fund that you can only spend the interest from it, or is that something else?
That's the cemetery.
Perpet-
Spring Road. The trust fund, their information's in the back of the town accountant's report that you get.
Mhm.
So you can kind of look and see, she shows the balance last year, what we spent. There is one that we would like to increase, and I don't have the dollar amount, but the the one for the health department where they buy the vaccines. We used to get a lot of them free. Now we're having to purchase them. And we do charge people for them, so the money's coming back in, but they're in danger right now of overspending. So we would like to increase that one. So I'll get that amount for next.
So that's in the revolving
Yes.
account. So will that number be changed then prior to our book being
Yes.
printed? Okay.
All right, the last one in taxation is the annual P36, the annual computer workstation and laptop replacement program, which is $119,007 from taxation and $225,000 from the cable fund.
And this is the one that we've done every year.
Wait a minute, can
This
we,
is the one we've done.
can you
Yes.
give me those
Yep.
two numbers again, John?
P30? Oh, you
I
guys,
got the
are you
36.
guys comfortable with this,
Yes,
going
this
forward with this one
definitely,
tonight?
this is the one that we.
Good night.
Guys, thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
This is the annual
Yeah.
one that we do. for-
It should be like two.
Cable fund is how much?
I had,
It's 393,
One-
789.
The total,
oh, the total, yeah.
the total's 393.
But I have $119,007 from taxation, that
Yep.
sound right?
Yeah.
And $225,000 from the cable fund?
It's like 274 or something. I don't
Okay.
have it with me.
Is it-
I have the total at 393, 789.
Yeah, so subtract
That's
11907.
Well,
Give me
it's,
that number again,
it's
Greg.
IT one,
Okay,
it's
I
IT
have-
one.
Hold on, get the calculator. 393, 789, and subtract what?
119007.
274, 782.
That's
Very
not
good.
right.
274,782.
And
And
Okay,
which
good.
one's
The
from
cable.
cable?
Cable is 274,782.
And the other
Taxation.
is
From
taxation.
taxation, 119,077.
Okay, so I move that the Finance Committee vote to recommend approval of Article P36 to raise by taxation the sum of $119,007 and to transfer from the cable franchise fee account the amount of $274,782 to be appropriated for the annual computer workstation and laptop replacement program.
And this is consistent with
Yes.
our understanding of how that all, what it's done, what we've done in the past.
Correct.
It is.
Correct.
This is the lease program where
No,
they
yeah, I
recycle.
just want to make sure we're consistent in that. Okay.
Mhm.
So one question would be, I mean, I think this is fine, and I moved it, and,
I'll
but
second
could we
it.
have can we have an updated history on how the cable fund's doing?
Yeah, I think we're gonna see some future drops in the cable fund.
See,
That's just my prediction based on my
Okay.
own personal experience.
Streaming.
so moved and seconded.
Moved and seconded at
Oh, what? No,
9,
maybe it
at
wasn't
9:30.
seconded.
I seconded it.
Oh,
Jane
sec-
seconded it, yeah.
Any other discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Okay, so that's 8-0. How we doing time? It's
It's getting
9:13.
late.
Did we
So-
do everything out of general fund borrowing, by the way, though? That,
I think so.
I
I
don't recall doing the large public works. Did we do that?
P25 for 350,000? Yep, we
Yeah,
did
we
that.
did that.
Oh, that is the one, okay.
And then the fire apparatus engine is
Yeah, we did that.
575, we did that.
Yeah, I think we're done.
Yep. The Ballardville Fire Station is engine improvements, that one we did not do.
The 3
'Cause-
million.
2,600,000, or, oh, maybe it's 3 million now.
It says on this paper, yeah.
So the Ledge Road Landfill Stabilization Fund is on here,
Yeah.
but we're not,
Summarize
I
it.
like to do it.
we're not, there's no proposal to put anything into the Ledge Road Landfill Stabilization Fund, is there?
We're
Okay.
not.
Good.
We're
Because
taking
it's,
money out of the landfill stabilization fund.
we are?
We are this year.
Ledge Road
17.
Landfill, oh, is that what P24 is?
I don't have it in front of me, but
Can we maybe move off the warrant article, since we do have a couple other items, and it's 9:15?
I have one question. Are we meeting Monday, just the Finance Committee, since it's not a joint meeting with the Board of Selectmen anymore?
I think we probably
I
ought
think
to.
we have to.
Yeah?
Oh.
Get some work done.
So we need a
Yeah.
room and a post for just a separate
Yeah, we can
FinCom
send you
meeting.
the agenda tomorrow morning, John, and I'll post it.
Okay.
That's this
Sure.
Monday.
It's
Yeah.
Monday, so
Monday.
the agenda has to be put in by tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
March 21st. And the agenda's gonna be warrant.
Everything.
Can we make a general, because I would definitely, like the town, would we cover the town yard items on that meeting, or do you want to wait till later?
Well,
We'll get
articles.
I'll make the agenda so that it's general
It's
enough
gotta-
to talk about.
But we
Okay.
definitely have to,
Do you know how much is coming out to Ledger landfill? Do we need to check into that at all?
It will be
I
the
haven't-
whole $3 million plus interest that we've earned to date.
3 million?
Whatever's in there is coming out this year. Is that?
Oh, everything is coming out.
To
Ah.
spend it. It may not all be spent this year, but we're at least voting to make it available.
Oh, interesting.
All right, I wanted to switch to the Finance Committee report schedule and the timing and content. And then I'm going to turn it over to you and Joanne.
okay.
All right,
So,
Joanne,
What do you
is it?
think you wanna?
well, I did a list, which I sent to you of last year's topics, and I also sent a schedule that's too little to read, but I tried to get it on one page. And because of the open meeting law, as we work collaboratively on the topics and content of the letter and the book, doing that has to be discussed at a public meeting and has to be posted, and it has to be done and voted on by us in time for our deadline.
Yeah.
There. That's all I have to say.
Did you send
Right.
that top list of topics out today? Or
No,
is it in my
this was-
inbox from before?
From Monday.
Yeah, I wasn't at Monday's meeting, so
No, I
is it in my
emailed
inbox
it.
still?
It'll
Yeah, it was
be,
emailed.
it'll be
Okay.
in both your town and your personal
Yeah,
email.
I'll get it.
And so the schedule has John drafting topics to get to Christine for distribution at our next meeting, which would be Monday, if you're ready to start making the list.
Okay.
Or to get input from people on what we think the major
letter.
topics are that we want to have pages for in the book. And Joanne, yeah, there you go. And then, and I think you've probably already started your way ahead, so.
No, not because some of these things I have learned from experience that it's a waste of my time to try to put them together until much
The last
closer when we
minute.
have the numbers, because I just have to go in and change everything.
Okay.
And if I change everything, that's a recipe for making mistakes.
But your point, on Monday night, we're just listing some of the topics without necessarily, like town yard would be one, and then that would be,
I think if we can get at least a topic heading of specific separate pages that we know we're gonna wanna include in the book, that's a good start.
okay. Sarbanes-Oxley, we're getting an A on compliance with the open meeting law.
That's very good, yeah.
All right, anything else on Finance
Try
Committee
and
report?
take a peek in the next couple of days. Today's Wednesday, right?
Yeah. Well, still, we're gonna be Thursday soon.
Self-funded health plan update, Donna?
We do not have the February numbers yet. We processed some kind of internal reporting problem. So we should have them by March 21st. So as soon as I get them, I'll send them.
But you sent we have a total number, right?
Through January, through February?
Through February.
Yeah. The
It did-
updated large claims, I'm sorry. We have the claim numbers through February, we just don't have the updated large claim numbers through February. So we're
And-
hoping to have that by.
And that's important because some of those might hit that
Some of those are
threshold
over
for
the stop loss.
okay. Stop loss, the policy that we have. Okay. Anything else on that one?
Nope,
Greg,
that's
any-
all we have
any-
so far.
Nope.
Liaison updates? Bonnie?
Guys want an OPEB update?
Done.
I thought we had a pretty good discussion
Well,
and information shared,
yes,
don't you?
because we heard from 2 people, so a little bit of an update for the rest of the committee.
Sure.
How's that?
So, more or less, the subcommittee is continuing to meet. Their deadline still is March 31st. And they're looking to get a draft out by this Friday to start, kind of like getting the draft out. So, pretty much that's, and I think Lynn sent the minutes around, so the minutes are posted on the website. And then there's a lot of content in terms of the discussion, in terms of some of the things that Bob was referring to in terms of recommendations prospectively. So, rather than go through it all tonight, I mean, it's pretty detailed in terms of what they're looking at, so. But, I mean, the ultimate thing is, I think what we should do is have that, once the committee does come out with its report, we should have Mike and company come in and talk about it.
Well, if the report's being made available Friday, could we get them?
In draft?
Will they come talk to us on Monday, or do we have to wait until they formally present on the 31st?
I'm sure we have to wait.
I think we have to wait.
I think
because
there's
the
been
bo-
so much about
Yes.
that, Lynn, it would just create a very bad.
Okay, I'm just trying so
I know.
hard to make our statutory required
I agree.
deadlines.
I know.
So, the question I have, looking through the minutes, there were recommendations 1 through 36, or
Many.
a lot of recommendations. A comment that Tom Hartwell made this evening was, we could do all those recommendations and it's really not going to budge
Make a
the
big-
liability much. I mean, he just said that in passing. And I'm looking at those, there's recommendations, but I don't see any quantitative information put down
Right.
for the recommendations. Do you think they're, I just thought, how do we, that's
Assess
an
it.
interesting thing of,
No, that's a very good question, Peggy, because there's a lot of thought behind, if we did this. But I think the next step has to be, if we did this, what does the impact look like in terms of applying those actual numbers? Because I don't think anybody has that yet, and understands that exactly. So-
I mean, to Joanne's point, there's certainly a lot of political pressure that can be brought to bear on this. And, we can go through a whole lot of turmoil and upheaval, and if it really makes really not much of a difference, so it would be good to have.
Right, I actually was under the mistaken impression that part of the delay to March 31st was that they were trying to put a value on the recommendations.
Maybe they are.
I think that the actuary
The
actuary has-
which
No,
which
no,
we'll get
no,
out
we
to
haven't.
tonight. I'm
We're
sorry
asking
that
them
it
to
was,
provide us with more information.
if it was available yesterday, it would have been.
So the actuary may have taken some of those
I
recommendations?
think you'll see
then?
certainly some
No,
quantitative.
Donna said no,
Not yet,
no.
but they're going to. We have to get the baseline report done first, and now we're asking them
Build off
to
that.
do some more scenarios.
But not before the 31st when the report
We're
comes
hoping to
in.
have it before the
Oh,
31st.
great.
Oh,
That's
really?
what I was.
Not before Friday, when they're drafting.
With-
Drafting, right, but the
Yeah.
idea is before the 31st.
Oh,
That would be good,
okay,
at least for
okay.
the biggest
Friday
material
before the
items,
18th.
you would
Yeah,
hope,
good,
yeah.
good.
Well, maybe we should just put OPEB on Monday's agenda for general discussion, because even though we don't have all the information that we
It's a
will
good
have, we
idea.
can at least begin to try and wrap our heads around philosophically what
Well,
this,
and
I think
then
that's an
we'll have
excellent
that- I'll just have that as a standing
every
agenda.
agenda
Okay.
from now
All right,
till.
good. Anything else, John?
No,
No.
I'm good, thanks.
Shelley and Joel will be at our Wednesday, the 23rd meeting. Greg, you've had some exchange with Shelley. I don't know if you want to share anything more about that.
Yeah, so, there are the 5 drivers of their budget, they're saying, one is the current service level, which is really just the contractual obligations that they have. That's about $2.5 million, and to me, that's a must-have. They have to have it. The contractual obligations are there. As Janie and I mentioned already, we've got a lot of information on the out-of-district costs that would justify that the costs are going to go up high. And as I said, there's like 3 buckets. There's 2 high-cost kids, one at 400, one at 100. There are 5 that are going to be placed that haven't been placed yet, and there are 5 unilateral placements that they're negotiating. So all of those things add up to that increase. Where I asked for additional information, and I asked it at the tri-board meeting, I asked Shelley, remember, one of the other areas is the elementary enrollment, that it went down, we reduced teachers, and then it went up again. I asked for data from Shelley, and I got it, and in 2009, 2010, elementary education average class size was 22.6. In the 10 and 11, it was 22.1. In 11, 12, it was 22.9. In 12, 13, it was 22.8. 13, 14, it was 21.9. And that's because elementary school enrollment went down almost 100 kids. And the number of full-time teachers didn't move at all. And then in 14, 15, the number of kids dropped even more. Number of teachers didn't change at all, so it went down to 21.3. Last year, it went to 23. And if we don't increase the 5 positions, it will stay at 23. If they put the 5 positions in there, it goes down to 21.9. So I think this is a matter of perspective.
I thought he was mentioning numbers like 27 and 29.
Yeah.
What's the,
Those
what's
are
The way that happens,
individual
yes.
classes.
yeah.
You take a
There's a
school.
potential for that.
You can have a fifth grade at one school that has 28 or 29, and fifth grades at other schools that have 20 kids in them. And you're not going to bus kids from, just the fluke of where kids geographically happen to live.
Well,
So that can happen and does happen.
I think number of classes over a certain number would be a useful thing to have as opposed to just an average.
It's in the book, isn't it?
But I think that the point he was making is there are places where it's really high, and then what happens is by addressing that, you kind of come low, right?
Well,
But
I guess
But you
it's-
can't
where I'm just trying to share some data because, and then on the high school scheduling, nobody knows whether this will have a positive impact or not a positive impact. They don't know. We don't have any measurements set up to determine. I challenged a little bit just so I understood that the first part of the presentation by the superintendent was how we're not failing. So our four-year cohort graduation rates are very high. Our SAT reading scores are high. Math is high. SAT writing is high. Our enrollment in institutions of higher learning are high. Our per pupil expenditures are high. And our average increase in per pupil expenditures. Now, everything is trending in the right direction, which begs the question of if everything's going so great, why do you have to have 5 more teachers and why do we have to change the high school schedule? Because if we got a big budget cap of 1.8 million, I'm trying to differentiate between the must-haves and the choices they want to make. And that's their decision, right?
Right.
So I can't tell you whether it's better to have 5 more teachers or not.
Or an H block or not.
Or an H block or
You
not.
know, the letter that Bonnie got,
Right.
I've had similar kinds of things, and I don't feel that as a FinCom, that's our decision to make.
No.
If you have block schedule or not, it doesn't. All we can say, I think, I agree with you, Greg, is that this is gonna cost a certain amount of money, and
We don't know what the
Metrics.
How to
benefit
measure
of the
it.
investment
Well,
is
so
gonna
one
be.
of the things that consistently has been discussed is that, you hear there's no perfect schedule. And so one of the points that I've made is if there's no perfect schedule, but there's a cost of change, then the hurdle should be pretty high for making that change. To make, and you said it's unclear what the benefit is. I do want to bring up though that the when they had the accreditation committee come through, there were points about the high school and the implementation of the H block is supposed to provide more
Address that.
advisory support to students to address the concerns that that committee had and was in the report. So that is a significant. They view that as a very significant benefit and. I will say I was a skeptic on the schedule, and I don't want to make this about my own personal opinion, but I will say that I'm feeling, I came from a position of I like the block schedule, my kids are doing fine in it, to being much more neutral and understanding that there are some significant benefits that they've been emphasizing, and I now understand better, to the new schedule. But I think it is a matter of the priority. Like, if they want to get this done, there's additional
else
cost
has to give.
associated with it, and you're going to be increasing across the board. This is all staffing for the most part, except for the textbooks, and so you're increasing that staffing level going forward.
Where I'm coming from is the school budget that's presented to us is so much more than we can afford given the revenues. You can't have, when we talk about health insurance and stuff going up, you can't have something that goes up 6% of your revenues are only going up 4 or 3 or whatever.
Right.
In fact, the increase that they're asking for is more. It's like they're asking for the increase that the town manager gave the schools and the increase that the town manager gave the town, and another $1 million.
Right.
Yeah, but
It's like, where is all that supposed to come from?
But I think
so.
what
If I can't figure out how to fund at that level, and something has to go, it's usually easiest to take off something new rather than take off something that's been there
I
for a
think
while.
that the
So
real-
not saying
right.
them, you can't add, because we just don't have the
So
money.
we have them coming to talk about their school budget, and so maybe we can help them understand that what we really want to hear about is that priority, Greg, you know, that how were they looking at those decisions in terms of the priority, because he positioned it that way when he presented it. You know, elementary school class size, if you have to reduce your budget, it becomes a choice. I do want to just point out that the painful part of this, if they don't do the high school schedule, is that people have been working on this very, very, very hard. And there are a
they're
lot
ready
of
for the
supporters.
summer.
There are a lot of supporters who will be very disappointed if it doesn't move forward. There's probably a whole lot of people that will say, oh, great, happy to have the status quo. But there are people who've been working very hard to move it
It
forward.
is two-sided. There are
Yeah.
pros, there are people for and
But it's a
people
school committee decision, not a finance committee
That's right.
decision. And the candidates running for school committee are actually not all in support of this either. So,
Right.
you know, but that's not ours. What I really think, maybe, see if you think this is a good idea, I think maybe we should get questions that we know we want answered to Greg and Janie, so that
Yes. I
we're
do think
not
that's a
winging
good
it
idea.
and wasting time with Shelley.
Well, why wouldn't we just hold those questions to the Wednesday meeting and just ask them those questions?
If we get them ahead of time, they can prepare.
Oh, we can, yeah,
Yeah,
sure,
sure.
that's not a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah.
I guess it is a matter of whether we think it's a question that they've been fielding and we just want to hear their perspective, or whether it might be something they may need to get some more information on.
Well, I guess I agree with what Joanne said. It's a budget that is much higher than we really have the dollars to do. So I was trying to understand what's out of their control, and the contractual allowances that I guess they were in their control when they agreed to them, but now they have to live by that contract. The out-of-district costs are what they are, but these other things, now these are choices they're making of how they want to run the schools. And that's not for us to say, but when I look at the financial implications of that, I can't say that I could agree that we should go spend roughly $1 million to change the high school schedule. Because there's no objective data that says if we do this, graduation rates are going to do that. And everything they showed us is all going this way.
But I think we're relying on them as experts in education to indicate why, in fact, this schedule is better. And I think that is a question we should probably say. That is the fundamental question that we're going to be putting to Shelley. So maybe we should just say, that's what we want to hear.
I agree with Greg. We're just looking for
Except that
some
that
foundation.
brings us back to us making a judgment
Benchmarks.
on the educational value within that.
Yeah,
Guys,
yeah,
not our-
right, you're right, yeah.
Tomorrow night, you know, if you don't see the school committee meeting tomorrow night, maybe look at it, because there'll be like an hour or
They're
two.
gonna
But in the
discuss
interest
the
of time,
Yeah,
can we
definitely.
move?
Well, I want to
finish the-
say, just I do, just because everything we're asking for, we're getting, and the information, and which I think is terrific, and it's a very prompt response, you know, when you go to Shelley, and I might not agree with his conclusions on things, but they're willing to provide the data, they provide it promptly. I feel good about all that stuff. I know there's been some questions about that level of cooperation in the past, but I feel that they're being very cooperative. And I also feel that they're being, I had lunch with Shelley and I told him what I agreed with and what I didn't agree with, and what I personally, as a finance committee, not speaking for finance committee. And I'm sure he didn't want to hear all that, but he takes it well. He respects your point of view, your opinion. I think that's all terrific.
Are you and Janie comfortable, despite the fact that the position control module, Munis position control, has not been implemented, that they have an actual clear and accurate handle on
At least quarterly, Lynn, yes, on their position. Wouldn't you agree with that, Greg?
Yeah.
I mean, at least quarterly, they know exactly where they're at. Day to day,
okay, and do they feel that it's important to have a more frequent,
Shelley
accurate,
said it would take another FTE
or different software?
or different software to do it
I mean, I think the munis position control model doesn't work for the schools.
for schools.
You might remember that I've been saying that for 2 years.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And I don't think anything's changed, and I don't think we need another employee. I think maybe we need,
Other software.
or
Do other towns use Munis for schools?
people are pretty uncomfortable with munis.
Yes, they
In
do.
Tewksbury, did you use it?
I've heard that they do.
Lawrence uses it. All right, Greg, do you have anything else on your liaison reports?
I do
Well, on
not.
forever? No?
Do you?
No, I'm all
That's
set.
good. You have anything?
Yes, municipal services. So the custodians, and we did hear Chris Cronin talk about this, there are a total of 48.5 custodians in the town, 9 of whom are town non-school custodians and 39.5 are school custodians. And right now, they are being supervised by Editate and Paul Szymanski. And Editate and Paul Szymanski think that they cannot, that's makes their job description pretty hard to handle it all, and that they would like to bring in this other head custodian. The custodian would also be a supervisor for they're outsourcing 3 custodial positions, so they would also supervise that. The Public Safety Center, Youth Center, and Town Yard will have outsourced custodians. The proposed supervisor position would be 36.25 hours per week and would be paid for 50-50 by DPW and the schools. And they would report to, the supervisor would have 2 bosses, one is Editate and one is Paul Szymanski. And they would check, this person would check the buildings every day to see what kind of job was being done. They would order supplies, which they say is very time consuming, and monitor the outsourced custodians. And they would be scheduled for afternoons and evenings so that they would overlap with both the daytime custodians and the evening custodians. And Paul Szymanski said that his understanding is that there's a full-time supervisor of custodians many years ago who was cut for budget reasons.
Is that outsourcing new this year? That's new this year. We've talked about outsourcing in the past, and there was a discussion about where you would be comfortable outsourcing and where you wouldn't. Is this a change? I just don't remember that when they were reviewing the budget.
I think
remember the
that,
staffing.
certainly the youth center is new and the town yard is new. At the moment, what he does is he just sends somebody over a couple days a week to clean the bathrooms. And besides that, they don't have a custodian cleaning any of the
It's interesting that we build a
buildings
new town yard and now we have to have custodial staff,
No,
whereas the old town yard
he would use
didn't
this
need
one.
it.
He wants to outsource for the West Street.
You mean
But it's still
youth-
cost.
You mean the
It's still
youth center?
cost.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, no, I'm talking about like in
Down the line.
So you're saying they down the line when we have a new town yard, it'd be interesting to
Oh.
say, okay, does that now?
Yes, so yes, and they are proposing a new outsourced custodian. It's page 106, 26,000. This person would, in addition to cleaning town yard, they would cover the cemetery building and would be used elsewhere in the town. So they are proposing a new outsourced person.
So with the schools, in the past, they had a supervisor for all their custodians. And then when they were making a budget cut, they took that position away and just kind of put it under Paul Szymanski's umbrella, which
And
makes
that was
no
a
sense at
long,
all.
Yes.
long
Yeah, he said 12
time
to
ago.
15
I'm not
years
sure
ago.
exactly, I'd have to go back and look. It's a
A long time.
long
ago.
time
Well, he
ago.
thought it was 12
We're
to
not
15
talking like the
years.
last 5 years or the last 10 years.
Oh.
It's a long time ago.
Okay.
His guess was 12 to 15 years,
Yeah.
is what he said. So anyway, so there's that, which, and we, somewhere, I don't know, was there a collection of new positions that we were collecting?
Yeah,
Because I was
well, we
thinking-
wanted to sort of have as a general discussion on how we feel about new hires,
Yeah.
not school, but the town request.
So these would be some of them. They want, they're asking for interns for the leaf dump, the Bald Hill leaf area. Right now, there's some Scripps volunteers helping, but when the Scripps volunteers cancel out, the shift is covered with overtime on the DPW staff, and they think that hiring some green team kids would give local summer jobs and would come out to be the same money as they're paying in overtime right now.
A really good idea.
So the recycling budget is going to have a 20% increase from last year because the market for recycling has tanked. So it's having a $107,000 increase. And all in on a per ton basis, recycling is about as expensive as trash right at the moment. But the tipping fee, it's interesting, the tipping fee is actually more for trash than for recycling. Even
What's
though
a tipping fee?
you have to pay someone to take it off your hands. So I think that, tipping I picture as they're tipping the truck, the
Oh.
barrel of the truck is, I assume that's where the term comes from. Let's see, so the trash is just as a 2% increase, so that's staying fairly much the same. Electricity line item on page 108, they split it into 3 line items so that they could track it better. But they expect 100,000 for electricity will drop in FY18, 100,000 lease to purchase, it's going to go away in 5 years. And then they have a $50,000 for maintenance, which is contracted out, but that includes, we're converting to LEDs everywhere, and so that money is going to decrease once all the streetlights have been converted. So they are expecting a decrease, projecting in the future decrease in streetlights budget. And
That'll fund our increase in recycling costs.
something like that.
Green, you know.
Peggy, how long is are the trash and recycling contracts? Are they annual?
Usually 3 years,
3?
with a 2 year
So there was
option
a
to
new,
extend.
there was a thing on the website about a new recycling.
Just started
Yes,
this week.
they were
This
just,
week.
they just
Yeah.
negotiated it, yeah.
There was
Yeah, that's a different story. Right.
So, a couple other things, I don't know if the telephone line department requested 58,000, the town manager cut it, but he says we're already over that amount, that it was cut to 29,000, but we're already over that at this point for this year, so there will be a couple of these issues. Natural gas had a 17% decrease due to the drop in prices, so that's kind of expected. And that's it. I'll skip the others.
We talked about the positions when we were doing departmental reviews, and I think Andrew had some follow-up on some of those positions in terms of, you know, looking at the
True total
total
compensation.
cost. Are we going to be hearing back on that? Is there, I mean, we ask about it every time, I just don't, I just feel like at some point we should be getting some follow-up.
So we have did everybody locate the true total, the Bob Landry's compensation model?
Mm-hmm.
And then Andrew said he was going to be,
Is he still working on that?
We are gonna work on it, we haven't started working on it yet, but we understand how everybody feels about it, we talk about it all the time, we wanna come up with something and then kind of put it to bed and move on from
But, so
there.
the question is it too late for this year and this finance committee report? Because you've listed that as a possible topic, I think, but timing-wise.
it just feels
Talk
like
to
2
Andrew.
weeks ago that Joanne said we can't do it this year, and that was last year.
Yeah. But I think that's, I mean, to get in this finance committee report, we have,
After listening to Andrew talk about the schedule and the deadline?
yes,
I
yeah, there's a
I-
lot going on.
I wonder if structurally we want to set up a framework or something, or just do something in the book to kind of acknowledge it. I don't know, Donna, if you can.
But otherwise, it's going to be this, it'll be a year from now, and we'll have the same, it's too late for this year, so how do we?
That's a good idea, just have a structure,
Yeah.
not necessarily.
Not the numbers even, just kind of say, these are the components. And it maybe moves us just one tiny step forward from last year where we mentioned it in the letter.
Right. We say, look for this in next year's report.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, let's say we're looking forward to having the numbers, and this is what we want to see. We could probably come up with something
I'm sure we can
like
craft some language.
that, you know? Here's the list of things we want, and
It sets the stage
Yeah.
and offends everybody.
And sets up that idea that you're gonna, fund that current cost for those future
Yeah.
liabilities as a component.
Let's discuss it when we discuss.
there.
Yeah.
Lynn,
What
do
am
you
I
have
reading?
any updates for us?
Newton's.
Liaison
Have you
updates?
heard of anybody else doing
No.
that?
You sure?
Okay, well,
Uh-oh.
we're talking
Yeah,
about,
let's
no,
talk
I
like
just want to
2%
add to
there.
I
the.
mean,
Have you heard of
we're
anybody
we're
else?
just out of
Has a-
control
No,
tonight.
new
It's
hires,
going on.
I just want to remind you that
Total
community
compensation
planning and
thing?
development is
I've
on
asked
the
all my
people,
colleagues
one of the
and
departments
nobody has
also
one.
requesting a new
I've
hire.
never
That's
said
it.
the way
That's
we're
all.
looking at it.
Well, and also it occurred to
And
me,
we are,
but the town
Same reason
council
we don't.
is in a way a new hire, right? Even though it's, so when I was thinking about new hires, I was like, oh, there's another one.
Well, it is a new hire. When you said in a way a new hire,
Well, they still, we paid money for it, so it's not.
We already do.
but
that.
when you move
That's
something
not a
from
hire.
cost to head count, that's a new hire.
So when we're tracking new hires, that was when I thought of this.
Okay, we'll
I'd
have to-
forgotten about that.
It would be embarrassing to forget about that.
Joanne, any updates?
Yeah, the TIF thing looks like it's going forward.
Oh, good.
Which we heard
Yeah.
So
earlier.
don't
We heard
forget
that.
about
Can
the
you
flooding
believe
and.
When does it
Chesterfield
sign?
was a-
It what?
See, Chesterfield, it's like this, and then it goes down into what's called the flats, and then that goes up to the
And
Missouri
that's where the
Riv-
soccer field
and that
is,
goes
the
up
lights.
to the Missouri River, and that's where, when the Missouri
So
River
go
floods.
beat Chesterfield.
Yeah. All right.
It's looking very promising. I mean, you know. But I think it's just too late to go into the details.
Right.
And you'll get a whole presentation next week, so.
Yeah, that's exciting.
But it wasn't something that they just asked for a TIF and we agreed. It's, the negotiations have been going back and forth for weeks.
But it's nice to have had the experience of one previously.
Yes.
Good. Okay. Donna? Anything?
Thank you.
Greg? Is there a
Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
John,
All in
second.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None? All right.